Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Planning and Zoning meeting for tonight, December the 2nd, 2021. Our first order of business will be our public hearings and comments section. Just a reminder of how we work this. Mr. Graville will introduce each section, followed by the developer, and then if anybody would like to talk, you have 5 minutes to do so at that time, and I'll have you step to the podium, state your name for the record, and then you'll be put on a 5-minute timer and we'll go from there. So our first order of business will be the East Walton Living -PUD 79. Mr. Graville, thank you.
Thank you, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. My name is Chris Graville. For the record, as a preliminary matter, I would ask that the public hearing notice published in the Warren County Record be made a part of the record by reference. The ordinances of the City of Warrenton, all correspondence received relevant to this project, including the plans submitted by the applicant and correspondence submitted by the applicant, and obviously the report completed by Tim Burks, the Director of Planning and City staff. Once again, my name is Chris Graville. I'm the City Attorney. Mr. Burks, the Director of Planning and Development, is not here, so I'm here presenting the staff report for the proposed 4.96 acres on the east side of Highway 47, north of Walton Street, the PUD Plan Unit Development. Now, as you guys will recall, a plan unit development under our code is not a traditional zoning district. It is essentially a negotiated district that allows flexibility for the development if it meets certain criterias. This is the 0.91 acre portion of a 4.96 acre area of land on the east side of Highway 47. I think we all know it as the former Kroger, behind the former Kroger building. The comprehensive land use plan. Can you pull up the report, Melody, and show the first? Okay, the subject site, that's the subject site. Can you go down to the next graphic for me? Under the comprehensive plan, this is set forth as corridor commercial or strip commercial development that accommodates heavier commercial activities, automobile-oriented uses, and/or outdoor operations that are not found in or compatible with mixed-use or neighborhood-oriented environments. Uses typically include offices and retail establishments, medium to large-scale businesses, and automotive-oriented uses, including drive-through facilities. So this is from our comprehensive plan for the City of Warrenton. If you can go down to the next graphic, the zoning staff analysis. The subject site is currently zoned C2, General Commercial District, and the proposal seeks to establish a PUD, as I explained earlier, to allow for 10 residential units to be constructed in 3 buildings. The purposes of the PUD allows for a variety of uses to be established on a single tract of land of at least 3 acres. The majority of the site is currently developed for commercial purposes. The proposal would allow residential uses to be incorporated onto the existing parcel. The purpose of the PUD is to permit a maximum choice in the type of enforcement available to the public by allowing a development that would not be possible under the strict application of the other sections of this chapter. 2, permanent preservation of common open space and recreational areas and facilities. 3, a pattern of development to preserve natural vegetation, topographical and geographical features. 4, a creative approach to the use of land and related physical facilities that result in a better development and design in the construction of aesthetic amenities. 5, an efficient use of the land, resulting in more economic networks of utilities, streets, schools, public grounds, and buildings and other facilities. 6, a land use which promotes the public health, safety, comfort, and morals and welfare. 7, innovations in residential and commercial and industrial development so that growing demands of the population may be met by greater variety in type, design, and layout of buildings, and by the conservation and more efficient use of open space and ancillary to said buildings. And 8, residential, non-residential, or a combined residential, non-residential development. And if you can go, Melody, down to page 5 at the bottom, the staff recommendations. Go up, right there. Staff has reviewed the proposed PUD and recommends denial for the following reasons. It shall be required that any transfer of ownership or lease of the property within the plan unit development include in the transfer of ownership or lease agreement a provision or lease agreement, a provision stating the purchaser or leasee agrees to be bound by the conditions of the ordinance authorized in the plan unit development. 2, the proposed inclusion of residential uses onto a commercial property is not well integrated and conflicts between land uses are anticipated. The residential portion of the property would directly abut the loading and storage areas of the commercial properties. No mitigating features have been included to reduce or eliminate these concerns. Wanted to add, staff went over this again today and looked at this number 2 to see if there were alternatives, but because you were talking about a 4-acre piece of ground that is already dominated by a commercial area, and it's just the 0.91 acres where they want to put this residential units, staff does not believe there is a mitigating technique that could be constructed to mitigate between these conflicts. 3, the proposed PUD does not meet the intent of the PUD standards set forth in the city code. The criteria we reviewed above, which is also reviewed in the report, many elements of it, staff does not propose meets that criteria. And 4, the proposed PUD is not consistent with the City of Warrenton Comprehensive Plan, and I'd take you back to that initial photo where we reviewed it, where it essentially said to avoid conflicts between residential and commercial developments. I can take any questions from the Planning and Zoning Commission at this time. If not, I'll let the developer go ahead and proceed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. For the record, Bart Corman with Lewis & Beatty Surveyors and Engineers. The developer on this one is TGL Properties LLC, represented by Mr. Brian Scheidegger here, and he's here as well. So Mr. Graville did a great introduction to this development. Basically, it's the undeveloped part behind Kroger, or what used to be Kroger. There was a couple options for us to do. We could have looked at doing a subdivision and then doing a site plan for that, or go through the PUD, which does allow for a mixed use. So we went through so we're applying through the PUD process in this case. So it stays all one tract. The owner intends to keep these under ownership, all as one tract, and rent out the units, similar to the commercial leases that they have on the front side, just residential use there. And with it not having good frontage and stuff like that, we looked at it being residential, park across the street. Thought it was a fit that worked there for that, compared to trying to put some commercial back there, kind of off the beaten path. So, but it is only about 0.91 acres that we're really changing. We're going to bring in a water line through the middle of the site, where the electric lines and stuff already run. We're going to bring an 8-inch water line, put a hydrant back there to meet some fire code there. We're going to put parking along on the front side of East Walton. The units will face East Walton. Dumpster will be on the west side of that portion. Mailbox unit will be right there in the middle. We'll have a landscaping, the foundation shrubs and street trees, parking trees all up in the front for that. And it's on the ridge, so a little bit of stormwater runs off to the east. Most of it runs to the west. We're going to pipe it in and tie into the existing stormwater system on the west side there. And I'll take any questions anybody may have, and then I guess I can follow up there, at the end too. So,
Thank you, Mr. Corman.
thank you.
Anybody have any questions at this time for Mr. Corman? Okay. Is there anybody from the community that would like to speak on behalf of this at this time? Hearing none, we'll close that public hearing.
Pull the agenda real quick again.
And our next order of business will be the 10.79 acres west of Highway 47, north of Warwick Avenue, Subdivision -97. Turn the floor back over to Mr. Graville.
Make sure I got this. I should have this. Subdivision 97. Okay. Good evening. Once again, Chris Graville. This is new public hearing. As a preliminary matter, I'd ask that the municipal code of the City of Warrenton be made a part of the record by reference. The advertisement in the Warren County Record for this public hearing be made a part of the record by reference. All correspondence between the city and any citizens, and also all correspondence with the developer of this project, be made a part of the record by reference. This is the project summary. This is a 10.79 acre of the west side of Highway 47 north of Warrior Avenue, the preliminary plat, Subdivision 97. Nurdosh, did I pronounce that correctly? Nurdosh LLC has submitted an application for a preliminary plat approval for a 10.79 acre of area of land on the west side of Highway 47 north of Warrior Avenue. The preliminary plat is requested to subdivide the parcel into 3 tracts, each complying with the zoning and subdivision requirements of the City of Warrenton. A preliminary plat is the first step in the process. The plan shows preliminary designs of lots, roadways, sidewalks, stormwater management facilities, sanitary sewer, water lines, fire hydrants, street lights, and easements required to provide municipal services to the future lots. Can you pull up that first image on the report? Melody, sorry, right there. That's the subject site. The comprehensive plan, the future land use plan designates the subject site as a mixed use. The site is currently undeveloped. The mixed use designation promotes a traditional design with commercial and residential uses as proposed. The applicant would like to construct a gas station with convenience store, drive-through, restaurant, and car wash, all commercial uses that are consistent with the plan. And from a staff perspective, this is a consistent trend for gas stations to be multifunctional without just the traditional C-store and gas pumps. Staff analysis. We would note the following features. The proposal creates 3 lots which are served from a proposed internal private roadway system. The proposed internal drive also provides access to the north for future development to utilize and reduce the need for additional curb cuts on Highway 47. Preliminary stormwater indicates stormwater is handled through an existing detention facility. City staff, prior to issuing any building permits, would absolutely want to require that the proposed system is appropriately designed to address the design stormwater events, and that will be submitted during the construction improvement plan process. That is very important because this will, if it is approved, we'll have a lot of pavement impervious surface that will be put in, and under our code requirement, if it's a unified system, that's fine. There will be additional easement requirements that will be part of the approval process, but we will get that information when we get into the construction improvement plan. Staff has reviewed the proposed preliminary plat, and found that the proposal is consistent with Chapter 410 subdivision regulations of the Warrenton Municipal Code. Further, the proposed design furthers the goal of the comprehensive plan. Staff recommends approval of the preliminary plat with the condition that the stormwater management plan is submitted prior to the land disturbance permit. Thank you, unless you have any questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Corman.
Thank you. For the record again, Bart Corman, Lewis & Beatty, Surveyors and Engineers. On behalf of Nirdosh LLC, Jaitan Patel. Jaitan's not here, but Tony Gagliano, his realtor, is here to answer any questions that I may not be able to. But this public hearing is the subdivision. So this is the preliminary plat for 3 lots. Corner would be for a gas station, the C-store that you'll see here in a minute, leaving a larger lot in the, to the west side and a smaller lot just to the north there. We did elect to have private streets and to stub to the north to an undeveloped lot in Bruni for additional traffic flow. It makes sense. And yeah, the Bruni development was all designed with stormwater detention, which is right up above Binkley Lake there, and so it would tie into that. So that's pretty much it. 10.79 acres, and we're cutting it down into 3 lots at this time with commercial intentions. I'll answer anybody's questions they may have.
So, can you explain where's the convenience store going to be located?
Sure. It's going to be on lot 6A, 2.81 acres. It's going to be right there at the corner, Warrior and 47. Right? Yeah.
And so you'll have entrances covered from Warrior Avenue and from the Bruni Parkway that's going through the back. But does that one go in the middle? Is that going to be out to 47 there?
Yeah. So
I mean, I know there's a little cut of pavement up there already.
So north is actually this way.
Yeah.
Okay, now north is that way. So the light at Warrior and 47 is right here. When we get into the gas station, there'll be a right in, right out here, but then the main entrance will be this private street here, and then right here off of 47, we'll do that. The church's driveway is up here just a little ways. We couldn't put this entrance any closer to the light because MoDOT has a restriction on a distance from the light on 47, and so that's the closest we could put the entrance.
Bart, is there consideration that entrance off of 47 currently at the Casey's convenience store, when northbound traffic, that's a congestion point. Is there consideration of making that a right in, right out turn?
If MoDOT requires that, then or if something else requires it, then yeah, that would be the case. Because we do have a full light here, and we'd have full access here on this one here,
Right.
on Warrior. That if that's a concern, I think they would consider accepting that as a condition if necessary. But prefer to have full access because we are past the restricted access point from the light. But yeah, you know, if you're gonna try to turn in there, if you got the light and the left arrow, most people are going to probably use that, but not always. Everybody drives
just
different
concerned
than I
we've
do.
got so much school traffic there anyways, that if we have another congestion point, somebody trying to wait and clogging things up, trying to turn left into that could be a
Right.
pinch point.
Understandable.
And is this a good time for us to approach MoDOT I live right there, so I'm been pushing for MoDOT to make that at least 3. We know eventually we want it to be 4 lanes all the way through town. But is this a time to at least get that 3rd lane put in there? Because the intersection to Whispering Pine is the most dangerous intersection in this town. And we're going to get someone killed there. I mean, and we've had accident after accident, but we're going to get someone killed there. Just because it's over that little peak of the hill there at
Right.
the right time. And I know this has got to be close to, I'm trying to envision where there's a little piece of pavement up there on top of the hill. Is that where that road's going?
No, this will be towards the light from that.
It'll be a little further towards the
Yeah,
light.
it's actually where
Up on top of the hill then.
It's where the fire hydrant sits right now.
Yeah,
that
I
is
see it.
covered up by a big old piece of brush that's been
Yep.
growing there for about 10 years.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's good.
that's where it's at. If,
Well,
if
that's
you
better
really
then,
want to look.
because at least it's up on top of the hill where you can see both ways.
Yeah.
Because where that little pavement comes across there, whew,
Right.
that's a really bad point there.
Yep.
That answers. But let's still push MoDOT to, we need that 3rd lane in there, that turn lane. All the way from at least Casey's to
Casey's to Quarry Road.
Warrior. All right. Anybody got any questions for Bart at this time? Or for Tony? Go ahead,
This is
sir.
strictly for convenience for people that are driving with RVs, which is a real popular thing now. Have they decided on any kind of place for any kind of RV parking when people come in? This is strictly a personal preference.
Sure. I'll answer that more when we get into the site plan part of it, which will be real soon.
Okay.
But there is some parking for, like, if you have a trailer, you know, lawnmower, that type of thing, along the front side of the pumps. So you could pull up there, but there's not designated like RV pull through. Like if we were on a highway location, it'd be a little different, but we're not.
Well, I know in Kingdom City, they have a station in this, so,
Yes.
you know, they had some nice parking for people that, longer trailers and stuff.
And I was talking with the architect today about possibly changing some parking just slightly. We actually got a few extra parking spots when we get into that, and so that might be a trade-off that we might do. But yeah, I'll get into that here,
Right.
hopefully in just a couple
Thank
minutes.
you, Mr. Corman. All right, at this time, we'll open it up to the community. If anybody would like to speak at this time on 10.79 acres west of Highway 47 there. Step to the podium, state your name, sir.
My name's Casey Heinel. I live in Forest Ridge Subdivision. I've never been that good at math, but I know there's 5 gas stations currently in town. Is there a need for a 6th one? I feel like every time I've been to a gas station, I've never had an issue of getting gas, waiting on anybody. What is the need for the gas station? Also, my other question is it going to be a truck stop gas station, or is it going to be like another Casey's? You know, my concern is if it is going to be something where it's a truck stop, we're probably going to bring in issues that probably the community doesn't want. So those are my questions for everybody.
Thank you. Anyone else? Step to the podium, sir.
Hi, my name's David Bolte. I also live in Forest Ridge. I have concern also with just the traffic going on to Broome Parkway. I mean, they're saying that this road's gonna go up to Broome. I mean, I know we haven't got to it yet, but we're now talking about putting townhomes back there. That's a lot of traffic on that road already. Are we planning on putting a light in, or what are we planning on doing? If you're gonna be putting a light in now, is that gonna be interfering with his other turn lane that he's, or turning in? But also just we also have to upkeep our drain systems. I know they were talking about, taking care of that, but what about some of their runoff and damaging and getting into our drain systems that we're having to pay for? So I'm just kind of want to look at some of the cost of, just as a homeowner, what we may be running into with having the gas station there. And I'm with what he had said with what all is this really going to be bringing. I'm concerned with truck stops coming, a lot of truck semis coming in there, all the kids that are around in the areas. It just concerns me. And seriously, do we need another gas station?
Thank you. Anyone else?
Jeremy Klostermeyer. I'm the pastor at St. John's Lutheran Church across the road. I have mixed feelings about it. Really, I haven't thought too much about it beyond today. But I did have a question. There was 3 lots. Are all 3 lots going to remain commercial? I didn't. I might have missed that. I didn't hear that. Beyond that, I have talked to several people who said that it's not going to be a truck stop, but I can't answer that for sure. So that's it.
All right. We'll have Bart come back up in a minute. So, anyone else? Hang on, just a second, Tom. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sarah Collins, and I live in the Forest Ridge development. And as a mom who has kids at Warrior Ridge, this really concerns me. I travel that road multiple times a day, and the thought of having a business right there on the corner, that especially one with lots of cars coming and going, makes me very nervous. There are many children that walk to our own subdivision, but even further, and the thought of them getting caught in that traffic or trying to navigate that, the cars coming in and out, and especially with the hill right there, it just, as a mom, this is very concerning. And I just think that we have plenty of gas stations, that we can prioritize our money to go somewhere else and not this. Thank you.
Thank you.
I actually just wait and come over, Bart.
Okay. Anybody else from the community that would like to speak at this time? Hearing none, we'll welcome Bart and Mr. Gagliano. Can you state your name for the record too, sir?
For the record, I'm Tony Gagliano with Core Real Estate Group, and I represent the development group.
Thank you. So a couple of the questions that they kind of wanted you to touch on for sure is the 3 lots all being commercial, and the reputation of the news that's been out there that this is going to be like a truck stop instead of a convenience store. So can you kind of touch base on both of those issues for sure? Sure. Thank you.
Yeah, so there's no rezoning application tonight for any of this 10.89 acres or whatever it is.
Right.
So the intent is for it all to be commercial at this time. When we get into the site plan, which will be the next public hearing, you'll see that there's no tractor trailer parking. So it's not going to be a Flying J scenario. Could a truck pull in there? Yes, I have to, because you got to design it big enough for trucks to pull in to fill up the fuel tank. So can a truck pull in there? Yes, but for it to actually park overnight and to fuel up, no, that's not the case. And then when we get into the site plan, we'll also note that there's going to be a restaurant proposed. And when you look at the south part of town, if you go from Walton south, there's really not a restaurant for anybody on that side of town. So I think that, and Tony can probably tell you that there's probably more of a need for that than than anything to match up with this, if you look at the market, so.
To add on to that, yes, under no circumstances has this ever been planned to be a truck stop like a Flying J or anything of the sort. It's more so always been considered more of a larger convenience store that's going to offer gas. That's why it isn't as large as the islands as the other ones. We actually reduced it from 5 islands down to 4 islands. We're adding the EV charging, you'll see on the next site plan and everything else. And then there's the potential restaurant component. That's why we're putting the drive-through concept in. But at no time was this ever considered to be a truck stop. That kind of got thrown out on Facebook today, and it just went like wildfire. So, but no, this is a C-store, no different than a Circle K or something like that.
Anybody else have a question at this time for these guys?
I think I can say is that part of town is really underdeveloped as far as a place for people to go to get food, whatever.
Sure, especially with
Yeah.
Kroger leaving.
Yeah, with
you know.
Kroger being closed now.
Yeah, then that's why the store is more so the convenience store of aspect, but also it will offer fuel.
I don't know if this is the time to ask this. It might be in the next section, but hours of operation, what kind of things are they looking at this time?
I don't think that's been,
Discussed yet?
it's not been discussed to the point where, but at this point, I don't think it's his intention to be a 24-hour station, but I can't
Right.
say that at this point it is or not.
I think
It all
that-
that kind of is dictated by business.
Sure. But I think that would alleviate some of the concerns as well from the neighbors as well, so. Okay, thank you, gentlemen, appreciate you. All right, we'll close that public hearing and comment section and open up the next one, which is the 2.1 acres with the convenience store, car wash, and restaurant conditional use permit, 78 and SP 150. So, Mr. Graville, if you'll come back up and introduce this section to us, please, sir.
Good evening, everybody. Chris Graville, City Attorney, here presenting on behalf of Tim Burks, the Director of Planning and Development. As a preliminary matter, I'd ask that the advertisement for this public hearing be made a part of the record by reference, the municipal code of the City of Warrenton be made a part of the record by reference, the planning and zoning report be made a part of the record by reference, and all correspondence with the developer, the city, and any citizen be made a part of the record by reference. This is, and as it always happens when we have one of these projects, there becomes a little bleed over for what's for the prior public hearing and what's for this public hearing, and this is the conditional use permit and site plan for the 2.81 acre part of the west side of Highway 47 north of Warrior Avenue. It's a conditional use permit application and site plan for this 2.1 acre. The C3 district defines drive-through restaurants and car washes as a conditional use in Appendix A of the zoning code. Let me back up. The conditional use permit is requested to allow a gas station with convenience store, restaurant, and car wash. The C3 district defines drive-through restaurants and car washes as conditional uses in the Appendix A of the zoning code. This request has been submitted in conjunction with the preliminary plat to subdivide the existing tract into 3 small parcels, as we went over in the preliminary plat section earlier. The conditional use and site plan are proposed for the 2.81 acres of the southeast portion of the site. If you can pull up the first picture real quick, Melody, that shows the site location. Right there, that southeast portion of the subject site. The comprehensive plan, the future land use plan designates the subject site as mixed use. The site is currently undeveloped. The mixed use designation promotes a traditional design with commercial and residential uses. As proposed, the applicant would like to construct a gas station with convenience store, drive-through restaurant, and car wash. All commercial uses that are consistent with the plan. Zoning, staff analysis. The subject site is currently zoned C3, highway commercial. As stated previously, these areas are intended to provide the services, to provide service to the community and the traveling public. The use of the site for a gas station and convenience store is permitted under the C3 district regulation. I think that's to Mr. Corman's part, that this is the gas station and convenience store are already permitted uses in the C3. They could come in and do their subdivision, which would be an administrative approval essentially by this body and the Board of Aldermen, and they could put a gas station in there. The conditional use permits, the inclusion of the drive-through fast food and car wash are for the conditional use permit. So they can do that already. These are the additional accoutrements, if you will, that they're requesting through conditional use permit. I'm going to go through the conditions, and I know it's a little bit arduous for me to read through them, but I think it's important to see where staff lines up on these. The section 405.340G of the Warrenton Municipal Code requires the following findings in order to approve a conditional use permit by this body. And if you look at the report, it's lined out there, and then in italics is staff's response to this for this particular project. The conditional use will be consistent with the policies and intention of the Warrenton Comprehensive Plan and the Warrenton zoning regulations. The proposed CUP is consistent, in staff's opinion, with the plan policies of the comprehensive plan. The conditional use will not increase flood or water damage hazards in adjoining properties. The site is currently undeveloped, and stormwater review will be required separately by code. They are not allowed to put any more stormwater under the property, off the property than already exists. We will look at that infrastructure system to see if additional building or maintenance, and that will be looked at by our city hired engineer to review their city design and calculations, and we'll bring that forward to city staff. And if there's an issue, that will be brought in front of the Board of Aldermen. The conditional use will not generate noise that exceeds the sound levels and are typical of uses permitted in the district. The primary concern with noise from the proposed use would stem from the car wash facility. Additionally, a vacuum area along the southern property line which will generate additional noise. The applicant has noted their desire for 24 operations of these uses. Given the proximity of the existing residential uses and the mixed-use designation of the comprehensive plan, which promotes commercial and residential uses, staff strongly believes that the Planning and Zoning Commission should give consideration to limiting the hours of these uses. I know the comment was made, and I'm going to say this, and it's going to sound flippant, and it's more giving Mr. Gagliano trouble. Although Mr. Gagliano said hours of operation is dictated by business, that is not correct. Hours of operation is dictated by the city of Warrenton. So for the car wash facility itself, that is one that we feel very strongly with the proximity to the neighboring, homes, that reasonable hours of operation for the car wash facility to coincide with, typical residential sleeping patterns is what's recommended. Especially with regards to the vacuums. That's something we spent a lot of time looking at, and there are very expensive options to have quieter vacuums, but we think hours of operation would be the best way to address it for the surrounding residents and surrounding neighborhoods. Adequate access roads or entrances and exit drives will be designated and provided to prevent traffic hazards and to minimize traffic congestion at the site. One curb cut is proposed on Highway 47 and 2 on Warrior. The fire district has reviewed the plans for the site, including access, and found the plans to be in compliance with fire code requirements. The eastern curb cut on Warrior is proposed as a right-in, right-out access to comply with MoDOT access management standards. That was brought up before, and it appears as though the developer is willing to make this designation and can be made a condition of both the conditional use permit and the site plan because of this additional congestion from the two uses requested to make a right-in, right-out on 47. I know it's a gas station. They probably are not super excited about it, but I think, as Mr. Corman always is, he's very honest that it's a condition that is probably considerably reasonable, especially considering the proximity to the school. Street right-of-way and pavement within the vicinity of the conditional use will be adequate for traffic reasonably expected to be generated by the proposed use. We looked very strongly at this as from a staff level. These have been designed to accommodate the proposed intensity of land use that's there. This is consistent. These are commercial, so we do believe that these streets are up to that standard, and it does meet that condition. Glare of stationary or vehicular lights in conditional use will not affect the character of the neighborhood, and if such lights will be visible from residential areas, measures to shield or direct lights to mitigate glare are proposed. Based on the proximity to the one residence, we do not believe, staff does not believe there is a negative impact that is anticipated. The conditional use will not have any substantial adverse effect upon the use, enjoyment of adjacent and nearby property or conditions affecting the public health, safety, and welfare. Obviously, this is subjective. There are residents here that do believe this can and will have some effect that Planning and Zoning Commission has always taken into account and will consider and listen to. From a staff perspective, we really look at it from a geographical, what is the light shine out this way, noise and populates this way, what are the traffic patterns, and there is one single family home within that proximity, which is different than what the neighbors are looking at it from. We look at it from a proximity perspective. That is not located in the city of Warrenton. While not located in the city of Warrenton, the impact we believe we evaluated. Many of the trips to the subject site are anticipated to be pass-by trips already on the existing roadway, and this is a stop that exists. It's not a destination, but I'm going here. This is the gas station closest to me of the 6 that are in the city. The car wash facility on the rear of the site, strike that. The car wash facility is on the rear of the site, minimizing impacts to the existing structure to the south. The vacuum area is also located along the southern property line. We did request, and the developer gladly provided additional landscaping along Warrior Avenue to buffer this area from the residential use, the singular one to the south. The conditional use will be designed, constructed, and operated so as not to interfere with the development and use of adjacent properties in accordance with the applicable zoning district regulation. Once again, from a geographical perspective, it's somewhat limited. We look at it range-wise, not the same as a neighborhood or a neighbor would look at it. We did not believe that there was any interference that was anticipated. In case of existing, these are all new structures, so number 9 doesn't apply. And we believe this conditional use will otherwise comply with all applicable regulations. With regards to the site plan, I'm going to fast forward this. The conditions are laid out in the report, which are made a part of the record. I'm going to go to the recommendation. Staff has reviewed the proposed conditional use permit and site plan and recommends approval of the request with the following conditions. Provide a stormwater management plan prior to any land disturbance, verifying compliance with city code and city regulations. And these are conditions we are asking you make as part of any motion to consider approval. Provide a detail of the proposed trash enclosure to verify compliance with city requirements. I would also recommend limiting hours of consideration about limitations of hours of operation, especially with the neighbors that are here. Reasonable hours for the car wash, which in our experience generates the highest level of noise interference. And we, based on the discussion here tonight, would also recommend from a staff level add the condition of the right in, right out off Highway 47. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Mr. Corman unless any of the commission members have any questions.
Nice job. Thank you, Mr. Gravel.
Thank you.
Mr. Corman.
This is another public hearing. For the record, Bart Corman, Lewis and Beatty, surveyors and engineers. The applicant, Nidash LLC, and Jayden Patel is not here, but Tony Gagliano, his realtor, is. For that, that was a pretty good introduction of what was, in summary of what we've done, changes from staff. We've also added some electric vehicle charging stations in the northeast corner. Yes, we do have the vacuums down near Warrior, so we added the landscape that was requested there. If the car wash and the vacuums have to have a reasonable restriction, that's understandable as long as it doesn't restrict the normal business. That would be preferred. It is, a C-store, sells gas, and restaurant is the goal that we got here. It's a corner lot on 47 and Warrior's, a major thoroughfare that eventually will, might even loop around all the way to 70 one of these days. Probably I might be in a wheelchair, but that's part of the master plan is to do that. So it's a prime location for something like this, and that's why my client purchased it and wants to do this. We've got the perimeter shrubs, the foundation shrubs, the street trees, the parking trees. all that. And we'll go through the stormwater review through the construction plans like normal. So that's not a big deal. But that's what it is, and I'll answer any questions and address any other concerns from the audience through the public hearing.
So the right in and right out, I'm just picturing this off of
On
Woodsville,
47.
the mobile on the run, that's down the Parkway,
Okay.
heading towards around, like Westmeyer, going that way. This is kind of what this looks like. You go to the light, you make a right, you come back into the mobile on the run, their car wash is there. Then you can exit from there and go back out to Winsville Parkway and go right, but you can't go left. But coming on the Parkway, you can go right into the gas station. And then if you wanted to go past the gas station back to the next light, you could do that too, inside that commercial area. That's kind of what this picture's like to me too. And you mentioned a while ago about the 5 pumps. Is that measured, reduced it to 4? Is that Mark?
Yeah, so the original plan, first and middle, had 5 pumps, and we reduced that to 4 and added the electric charging station.
It's a coming.
Yeah, that's what kind of the consideration by the time this started. Quite a few months ago, we started the concept and got to this point with the local trends and stuff.
To my knowledge, there's only 2 in the whole town right now, so.
Right there at Chinooks, yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Go ahead, Mr. Costello.
The site plan as it's shown right now does show the 5 pumps, correct?
Depends on which.
The one we're looking at on the screen right now.
Yeah, the one that you're looking at on the screen does show the 5 pumps. So
That's what I was talking
apologize
about.
for that. Yeah. So the plan that was submitted Monday has 4 pumps. So there's a slight change there. So, but I think you guys can visualize that. It's cut off the north end. So, yeah.
Mr. Miller?
A couple of questions.
Sure.
First of all, how many wash bays would be on site?
On the car wash, right now we're proposing a 90 by 30, more like a tunnel. So it's an automatic wash. It's not a hand wash. It'd be the automatic. So it'd be one. So it'd be 1 bay.
And I assume when you talk about a restaurant, that would be like Hardee's or whatever.
It could be. I mean, it could be something like a Subway. It probably is not going to be a McDonald's. I mean, you got to have a little higher volume than what that corner is. I'm kind of speaking beyond as an engineer on that, but they have not secured a lease for a restaurant of any sort. But that's kind of what they're looking at, is having a restaurant of some sort that has a drive-through. As you know, I mean, the drive-through has been a lot more popular the last year and a half. So.
Has this gentleman done any projects similar to this anywhere?
Has he done some projects similar? He's got a couple stores that Tony.
He's got 2 other convenience stores right now, and then the gentleman also owns the liquor store here in town, the Express Liquor Store off of East Veterans Memorial, and he owns a few other ones of those.
Do you know where he has the convenience stores? What community?
He purchased, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Come on up, Tony.
So the question, Mr. Cagliano, was about the convenience stores. Does he own any others?
He owns other convenience stores, yes, and then he also owns strictly just a few liquor stores as well. But one of the convenience stores I know for a fact is over in Florissant, and then he's got one in South County, and then there's another one that he's in the process of purchasing.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Are those stores that he currently owns, were those designed and built by him or existing?
No, sir. They were previously owned by Petromart, and he purchased them off of the Ebley family. This is the first one that we're building from the ground up, and it'll be modeled after either a new Petromart or, like I said, a Circle K concept.
Cool.
So I did have a couple questions. So as I look at the orientation of this, I'm trying to determine where the vacuum area is in relationship along Warrior Avenue to what I know as the Ruggiero property across the street. One of my big concerns is, although the conditional use recommendations call for additional shrubs, shrubs, in my opinion, aren't going to deaden the sound of those vacuums. I am wondering, along that vacuum area, if those vacuums had a privacy fence in front of them, would maybe help deaden that sound coming across the street and also prevent the glare of headlights as they pull into those vacuum areas and as the vehicles pull out of the wash tunnel.
I don't know on a sound wise, if the fence would help some. And with all due respect, Mr. Ruggerio's got no issues with this development. Otherwise, he'd be here concerned about it. He rents it, and his intentions are eventually to tear it down and put commercial there as well.
Understood. And I've had those discussions with him. I know it's
Exactly.
marketed as commercial.
Right.
However, I do think that could be a mitigating factor. Even though he rents it, those are still tenants that are living there now, and
Sure.
just considering their
And if you guys, if the city decides to go more with a time of hours restriction, then that maybe isn't as much of a factor. If no one's vacuuming at 9:30 at night, is there much of a factor? And again, I don't know. I mean, if the fence would do much or not, because it's all open there. There's not a lot of sound other at this point, so I couldn't tell you.
If this is approved, do you have any guess of time frame of how long it would take to put this project together on that ground?
The construction would start in the spring of '22, and it would take most of the year. I do know that, things change constantly, but the tank itself is estimated at either 9 to 12 months before we can even get the tanks in the ground for this gas station. That doesn't mean that the convenience store / if we do secure a restaurant, couldn't open without the gas to start. But it'll take every bit of a year to develop this project.
How many vacuum bays are you proposing?
7.
7? Okay.
Yeah, and also on a note, and you guys probably already know this if you drive past it very much, Warrior's like the highest part of it, and then this site would sit lower than Warrior. So you'd already have some natural terrain.
Exactly.
On some of that there.
I hadn't considered that, yeah.
And if you look at the rest of the site beyond the C-store, it's a lot lower.
Yeah.
But, and that's a site challenge that I have, making it all work, but
Right.
it will sit lower than Warrior Avenue.
And most of that property across the street, though, the house is not that much of that property. It's just the back parking lot is because I go down to the pool every day. And all right, anybody else have any questions for these two gentlemen? Thank you, gentlemen. And I think I haven't lost my place here. I think it's time to open it up to the community. If anybody would like to speak on behalf of this part of the conditional use permit and the site plan. Thank you, sir.
Casey Heinold again. So they are proposing to put the car wash essentially on the west side of that property.
Right.
There's homes that line up right behind there. Now, I don't live right there, but I live a little bit further down. I can hear traffic off of 47 very easily. I don't think anybody sitting up here or anybody sitting back there would appreciate if I came out in front of their house, turned on the shop vac, and let it run for 20 minutes each time and constantly throughout the day, especially in the evening. So that will affect a lot of people in the community. No matter what, you put up brush, you put up fences, whatever it may be, you're going to hear it, especially from our homes. The other issue, I'm going to be repetitive with this, 0.6 miles away from this site is the first gas station, Casey's. I can walk there if I run out of gas to get gas. So people are talking about traveling another 0.6 miles to get gas. That seems pretty idiotic to me. It's only 0.6 miles away. The next car wash is 0.8 miles away, and there's actually two right across from each other. Again, we have two car washes. One I know is used very little. The other newer one, it's great, it's nice. But again, I can go right in, drive through, wash my vehicle, and don't have to wait. I don't know if that's a purpose. A restaurant, I think, would be great. you know, but again, we're talking about traveling 1 mile to a restaurant to get food. I don't know who can't travel 1 mile. Again, I could walk to a restaurant here and have a meal, so just something to think about.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else want to speak?
Hello.
Hi there.
My name is
your name?
Alexander Francis.
Thank you.
For the record, I'm a resident over here at Forest Ridge as well.
Okay.
My biggest concern when just about all the developments that we've been hearing and what we're about to talk about next, especially, the proposed plan that they have, the site, at least backs up to a few homes right there at the corner of Forest Ridge going towards the pool park. I guess my biggest concern is with that, how close is it? Are they putting up a fence to keep people from crossing over into our neighborhood? I don't think anybody really thought whenever they were purchasing a home in this section of area that this was going to turn into a commercial site versus a residential. And there's so much traffic on Bruin Parkway that makes it difficult for us to get in and out onto 47 already. So you're adding another gas station and no extra lanes of traffic, and it's just going to halt us there and make it harder for us to travel, and especially, like they said, more dangerous for kids. So I'd just like to see a resolution on those issues as well.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Jeremy Klastermeyer again. I'm just clarifying, is the right-in, right-out, is that going to be on Bruin Parkway? Or is there another entrance exit on 47? That was my question.
Thank you. We'll clarify that, but I'm pretty sure that that's going to be off of 47. The right in and right out off of 47. So the one would go down to Bruni Parkway, you'd make a right going back out there to where they make it normal, where the residents come in and out of there at this time. Or you go back out to Warrior Avenue to get the light, which is what most people coming out of that would probably do to make sure they get a light. I'm assuming. Anyone else from the community? Thank you, sir.
Howdy.
Howdy.
First off,
State your name, Mr.
Ron Smith,
Thank you.
resident for over 30 years. This development, let's see, the city approved this site of the Bruni long before that subdivision, I believe, is the new subdivision, and that was, I guess, set for, it was on the backside, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So, you know, what kills me is people that come out, they don't do their investigative before they purchase something. This has been zoned for this development a long time ago, approved by the city. If someone was coming out to purchase that home and that development, then they should have done their homework and looked. They see the property, it's for sale. There's 14 acres right next to it, that's for sale. That's going to develop. So, is it about the gentleman talking about going a mile? It's called convenience, and that's why it's a convenience store. And it's nice to have something on that side of town. It's about time, because there's a lot of people that I talk to that also want it. So it's going to be controlled. It's a nice site. As far as the residential on that backside, it's 900 feet from this development, okay, except for Rogerio's across the street, and you got the church. That's way back there. So I don't know, maybe people should do their homework first.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Somebody else would like to speak back there? Ma'am, come on up. Thank you.
Sarah Collins. I actually am one of those residents that lives on the backside of Forest Ridge. Our backyard backs up to this, and you can sit outside, which we do quite often, and hear traffic and hear stuff. I can hear stuff from the high school. I can hear stuff all over. So it's not going to be a quiet thing that's not going to disturb us. It will disturb us. I have 2 questions. My first one being, if there is going to be some sort of fast food or drive-through, will those have the same hours as the gas station? Meaning, will it be, normal business hours and not 24 hours? And then the other concern was just with the noise of having a drive-through. There's the speaker, there's constant cars, and will that be taken into consideration? Because those are things that are louder that we don't think about. And we do live right there. Our fun is hanging out in the backyard, and that will drastically change because we also don't have fences, and so we don't have that privacy, and this will change that a lot. So I hope that that's taken into consideration as well.
Thank you.
I just want to make a point that you could consider hours of operation for the fast food restaurant as well, just as you are about the hours of the drive-through. Commissioner Cornell.
Could you clarify for me, because I missed it when you said it earlier, what portions of this proposed development would be allowed without a conditional use, and what portions of it require a conditional use?
The gas station is a permitted use. They could develop it right now. Let me pull this up real quick.
While you're looking that up, I'd like to make a couple of comments too, though. First of all, thank you for all the residents that are here tonight. It is good to see you guys interested in protecting your area there. We appreciate that because that doesn't happen a lot of times, and we really appreciate you guys coming. I'm a neighbor of yours as well in that area. But back to the comprehensive plan, this is the Bruni property. I've been on this board for about 25, 26 years. That Bruni Park, we have talked about that hundreds of times over my 25 years here. We've seen it go from the Bruni farm, and we've seen it set vacant, and we've seen it set there. All along, we've been wanting something to go there. And then the city came in and put in a great pool, a great dog park, a great golf course. We've got things going in the right direction. Then the first subdivision that came in back here turned out very nice. I toured those houses when they were built. If I hadn't lived already across the street, I'd have bought one. I like that subdivision, and I like the neighbors over there. When I drive through, I like what I see because I drive that way from the pool sometimes on purpose. But I know that this property has been commercial all along because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, and I might be wrong, but I think originally we had always planned commercial up front, townhomes in the middle, single residence in the back. And then eventually that all opening up to go back to Morgan Avenue and off to Wolf Road. We've got all these big visions, but that's been over the last 20-something years we've been working on this. So it's good to see some kind of, at least some forethought coming into this. And as a city, I think we're going to make sure that this is protected to the point, if it does get approved, that we look out for our neighbors. We really do, and we hope that everybody appreciates that. But I did want to appreciate everybody coming out back. Mr. Graville, back to you.
Okay, so I just want to join on to that. If you all will remember, it was actually Bruni Business Park.
Right.
It's not, it was that the back was supposed to transition from commercial to business to multifamily development, and some single-family residential was supposed to transition zoning-wise to high-intensity uses, but it has actually, and the streets are built to a standard for a business park. But it's been repurposed in some senses with the residential units, and I think it's been a good repurpose, to your point, Chairman. To your point, Commissioner Cornell, the uses of the site for a gas station and convenience store is permitted on the C3 district regulations. So essentially what that means is that's already approved. It doesn't matter if there's gas stations that are in other parts of town or whatnot. They have a by right use currently under the code to build and operate a gas station convenience store. The conditional uses are for the fast food restaurant and the car wash. So there are conditions that can be added. There's also a site plan that can add conditions. I'm not sure, I believe Casey's closes. I don't think it's 24 hours.
No, it's at 11.
It's at 11, so, under the site plan, you could add conditions with regards to gas station. That was added when Casey's came through because if you look at the depth of Casey's, it basically infringes on that was a pretty tight neighborhood right behind. They bought the house behind to extend it. And I think there's 2 and almost 3 houses that it directly goes across. This has always been designated as a true commercial property and is permitted.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the community that would like to speak at this time before we close it back up to the I don't think anybody from the developer, you don't have anything to add to and I don't think there was any really new questions. We answered the one about the right in and right out. Can you address one other thing?
Sure.
I think this was kind of brought up by the young lady in the back and the gentleman at the beginning too. I think we're confused of how close these houses are to this part. There's a whole nother lot between this and their house, correct?
Correct. There is, on the previous public hearing, we had the re-subdivision lot 6 of Bruni Business Park. And so between this C-store and Forest Ridge, there's a lot called Lot 6B that's 6.6 acres. It's
Get ready for bed, Emery.
about...
Get ready for bed.
At the very closest.
Sorry.
So it's about 400 or 500 feet from the back property corner there to this building. So there's some space there. If we need to put a few more trees back along that private drive, I don't think my client would have too much of an objection there if we need to do something there. But there is going to be most likely another building in the future that's going to actually buffer any noise from this one before it would get to that. Granted, there's going to be an open field for a while. Of course, the brush is getting pretty dull too, but yeah.
I was considering as we were talking about this, that's certainly a direct line to those houses, especially back by where the entrance to the park is. I'm not so sure that my residence isn't as close as a crow's fly. And I'd say yours is as well, yeah, although it's across 47.
Right. And
How many feet did you say, Mr. Corder?
looking at the map from the very corner of lot 146 and 47 to what would be the building has got to be almost 400 feet.
400
in the very
feet.
back corner. Yeah. So from house to house is probably more than that, but
Can you point on the map?
sure. So right there would be the closest property corner of a residence, and the building sits right here. Okay?
A little over a football field.
Yeah. And then one question that was brought up from the public was hours of the restaurant and the C-store.
Right.
And would they be different? Yeah, most likely a restaurant would close sooner
Close
than the
before, yeah.
C-store.
That's why they
You
always
know, it would be, you know, I when I responded to staff, you know, they'd love to have the option of 24/7 operation. I don't really think for the next first few years that they're going to have that, but you know, when time goes on and Warrenton grows, there might be more of a demand, or when you have more shift workers, you know, if Binkley goes back to 3 shifts and, you know, Gateway has some late shifts, you know, there's got to be something that's there. This is on that south side of town for that. But heck, you know, Walmart used to be 24/7, but you can't go there at 1 o'clock in the morning anymore. So, you know, times do change.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Corbin.
you.
All right. We'll go ahead and close that public hearing. And we'll open up our next public hearing, Forest Ridge Townhome Subdivision -96.
Good evening. Chris Gravel again.
Thank you. Forgot.
As a preliminary matter, I'd ask the municipal code be made a part of the record by reference. I'd ask that the advertisement for public hearing for tonight's public hearing be made a part of the record by reference. I'd ask that the planning and zoning officer's report be made a part of the record by reference, and in all correspondence between the developer and the city and the residents in the city be made a part of the record by reference. This is the R3 high density submitted by Ben Beckemeyer Construction. It is a 13.32 acres on South Morgan Street. And this is just a preliminary plat. I know there are people that are going to speak here tonight, and just like you kind of saw earlier, this is just the plat itself, not the conditional use permit, which is where I think the merits and metrics of the project will really be addressed. A preliminary plat is the first step in the process to subdivide a property. The plan shows preliminary design of lots, roadways, sidewalks, stormwater management facilities, sanitary sewer lines, water lines, fire hydrants, street lights, and easements required to provide municipal services to the future lot. Once the preliminary plat is approved, the developer is required to complete construction improvement plans in accordance with section 410.225 of the Warrenton Municipal Code. It is also then recorded with recorder deeds. The comprehensive plan, the future land use plan with the Warrenton Comprehensive Plan designates the subject site as single-family residential. The comprehensive plan notes that new residential subdivisions should meld into existing neighborhoods, and the plan notes a desire for curvilinear street networks with numerous cul-de-sacs. Staff analysis. The subject site is zoned R3 high-density residential district. Multifamily dwellings are a conditional use in the R3 district. The preliminary plat depicts 17 lots. 16 of the proposed lots include 4 units per lot, and one lot depicts a duplex for a total of 66 dwellings unit proposed. Each of the proposed lots complies with the zoning and subdivision standards for multifamily dwellings. The proposed plan extends South Morgan Street south through the subject site with a termination along the southern property line, which will allow for future extension of Morgan Street to the south for future connectivity. The plan does not fully extend South Morgan Street to the southern property line and propose to terminate the roadway at Bruni Parkway with a roadway easement for future connection. Sidewalks are included on one side of all proposed streets and located within the proposed right-of-way. As sidewalks are proposed to be constructed, no contribution to the special sidewalk fund is required. The plan includes areas for installation of mailboxes. Information of maintenance of the mailboxes, i.e. homeowners association, has not been provided. Preliminary stormwater design includes curb and gutter drains to storm inlets that are then piped to a stormwater retention pond on the west side of the development and by the existing shared lake to the south, which is the City of Warrenton Lake. Final design ensuring the proposed system is appropriately designed to address the design storms events will be submitted during the construction improvement plan process, just like the gas station, which is our process. As the project includes facilities to accommodate stormwater from the site, no contribution to the Stormwater Management Improvement Fund is required. Common ground areas are included on the site. These areas include the stormwater retention pond and discharge and 2.9 acre tract on the southern portion of the site. Section 410.150 requires residential projects to provide park area and open spaces, or in lieu of thereof, at the option of the city, a payment of money in an amount in accordance with the defined schedule. While open areas are provided, these areas do not provide areas accessible to the public, and therefore a payment in the special park fund will be required prior to signing of the final plat. Street lighting is provided in accordance with city code requirements. They need to provide verification from the Warrenton Fire Protection District as to the adequacy of fire hydrant locations, and prior to approval of the final plat, a completion escrow will be required. Staff recommendations. Staff has reviewed the proposed preliminary plat and found that the proposal is consistent with Chapter 410 subdivision regulations of the Warrenton Municipal Code. Now, I want to remind those who are here to speak on and the Planning and Zoning Commission that this is just the preliminary plat subdivision, which is, do you meet the technical requirements? This does not get into the metrics of the conditional use permit to consider the use and whether the conditions of the site are appropriate for the use. Staff recommends approval of the preliminary plat subject to the following conditions. Provide details on the proposed method of maintenance for mailbox. 1. 2. Provide verification of adequacy of fire hydrants. 3. A stormwater management plan shall be submitted and approved prior to final plat approval. 4. a contribution to the Parks Fund shall be submitted prior to final plat approval. And 5, a completion escrow shall be provided prior to final plat approval. So this is just the plat. Any questions?
I feel like you missed one of those listed as far as the
Did I miss one?
method of
Trash.
That word, I was still thinking in my head how to pronounce that
trash.
word.
curvilinear.
Can you go back up just a little bit there?
Which one did I miss?
The trash.
The trash service.
Trash service.
Can you go back down to the bottom though, after the park funds? Okay, got it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Graville.
Thank you.
And the developer, Mr. Corman?
For the record, Bart Corman, Lewis and Beatty Surveyors and Engineers. Ben Beckemeyer Construction LLC is the applicant, and Ben Beckemeyer with the LLC is here. Yeah, so this is the preliminary plat. When we get into the site plan has been updated since those comments, so some of that stuff will be addressed. We will add the street lights, and that'll be shown on the site plan. We will add an additional fire hydrant per the request of the fire department up near lot 10. Trash service will be individually collected is what we're proposing at this time, and there will be mailboxes on the community mailboxes on the cul-de-sacs, and you'll see that on the site plan. But we'll have to still meet the stormwater management plan requirements. We're protecting a buffer along the creek to keep that buffer there on the west side. We're protecting the shared lake with the city of Warrenton, and even our stormwater outlet. We're proposing a rock berm for a forebay there to help with any large sediment to fall out to keep that lake a little more clear. So we've offered that as well. It's 17 lots on over 13 acres. They're multifamily lots. Your code requires a minimum of 12,500 for a 4-unit townhome, and a minimum of 8,400 square feet for a duplex, which we meet those requirements when we get into the site plan. You'll see that as well. And I'll answer any questions anybody may have.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Graville at this time? Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Or Mr. Corman? Nah, I can't keep them straight.
We look alike. I've been told. It's not the first time somebody's
It's the beard. All right, we'll open it up for anyone from the community who would like to speak on the Forest Ridge Townhomes Subdivision -96 at this time. I hear that train a-coming. Thanks, sir. State your name once again, buddy.
Hey, sir. It's Alexander Francis.
Thank you, Mr.
For the
Francis.
record, resident of Forest Ridge. Again, I just want to note the attorney's note that I understand that this is a preliminary plat. However, I kind of want to touch base a little bit on what we were talking about previously. One thing I noticed is that this was, from my knowledge, zoned as a single-family residential zone and not a multifamily dwelling. And I just want to kind of touch on that technicality base, that if the technicality for the commercial zone stays commercial, then why can't the single-family home stay single-family? And then my other concern is, a lot of us right there on that ridge, we paid a premium for that lot because of that forest line. If they tear all that down, I mean, how close is that street going to be from our house? We're going to see streets, we're going to see headlights. Are they planning on putting up a fence? What are their plans in conjunction with that? Essentially, it feels kind of like a slap in the face, if I were to say. No one's given any other information other than what they want to do, and we're really concerned about, somebody goes in that neighborhood, especially if it's a rental dwelling, and they drive through and, hit one of the houses or whatever. I don't know. There's a lot of what ifs. But my biggest thing is we paid extra for that lot, and they're just going to tear it down what's in it for us? And then the other part of it is that stormwater system is maintained by us and a bunch of other plots on that section. Are they going to be incorporated with us on that? And being as is, they connect to Forest Ridge Subdivision, are they going to have to be associated with our HOA association as well?
Thank you.
Casey Heinold.
How do you say your last name again?
Heinold.
Heidel.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I agree with everything he said. We had basically bought our lots that back up to the woods. We paid a premium price for it because, you know, there wasn't supposed to be any development. Now there is. The road behind there, I question that as far as how close it is going to be to our property line. The lighting, all of that. And then, what was the other question I had? Oh, so I moved into this town because I seen it was going to be growing, and I want the town to grow. I want to be part of it for a long time. The question I have is, do we want to bring quantity of people in here or quality of people in here? And, you know, typically, single-family homes are probably going to bring more families that are going to stay for a long time rather than townhomes, condos, whatever it may be. I would like to see, you know, those single-family homes move in here. It's going to raise property values of everybody in town. I think it'd just be more beneficial for everybody. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Heidel.
David Bolte. I do, again, I do live in the subdivision. I totally understand developing land. I'm with them. I want to see this town grow. But with that being single family, I really feel it should stay single family. I mean, I'm literally right at the corner of Broome Parkway and what's going to be Morgan Street. So looking at the map, it literally looks like Morgan Street is my backyard. So I will have road on all three corners of my house, except for the one side where I have a neighbor. It concerns me. I mean, where's the joy of sitting in your backyard when all you're doing is looking at a street? It's Morgan Street. It's now going to be connecting right us into Main Street. There's going to be a lot more traffic coming down Morgan. That concerns me. You're going to have people coming from Morgan now jumping onto 47 or coming through to get to the park. We already have traffic coming down from Parkway getting into the park. There's just going to be a lot more traffic coming in. I I understand developing it and trying to keep it connecting, but is there a way to take Morgan Street so it's not literally on the backside of all of our property lines? I mean, that seems like a pretty poor development on that aspect to me. If you are going to put a street in literally on the backside of all of our properties right there, can they not put a nice fence up that they maintain? A privacy fence, something to where we can at least sit in our backyards and enjoy them. Our HOA has rules where we are not allowed privacy fences. I know that it's not on the city, but that is inside our HOA rules. So if we have a street right on the backside of us, I have no right to put a privacy fence up to block that street. To me, this should stay single family, help bring everyone's property values up, and maybe change the way that the streets are coming through.
Thank you, Mr. Bolte. Hi, sir.
Hello there. My name's Scott Good. I'm also a resident of Forest Ridge. I had a couple of concerns. Number one, I would like to know how far from our lot lines, because I too paid the premium that Casey and Alex and a lot of us in here paid to get that. And we were told by the realtor there was no planned expansion back there. And now we're finding out that's not the case. So I'd like to know how far from our lot lines is the proposed street going to be? Are the sidewalks going to be on our side of the property or on that side of the property? And I would like to know if those townhomes are going to be rentals. Are they going to be owned? I mean, that's a big concern. If it's a bunch of rental properties back behind us, that's that's a good reason for us to move out of town. And that's really not our goal. So, and that's really all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Good. Anyone else at this time? Mr. Heidel, you want to say something else? Very quickly?
I just got one more thing.
That's fine, Mr.
I don't know if I mentioned, I asked if they were going to be luxury or low income. And then you also mentioned that you like the homes in that area. If you are interested, I'll sell you mine.
Thank you, sis. Come on up. State your name.
Stephanie Rodriguez, and I'm also live in the Forest Ridge subdivision. One of my main concerns with everything being developed around us is just this last summer, we had a lot of traffic going in and out from the parkway, and we have a lot of children out there, and we don't have sidewalks on both sides of the houses. So it's really hard when people are speeding through there, to manage all of that. So is that something, taking into concern, because you guys are creating a lot of more traffic going through our street, and that's a concern for all of our children. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else at this time? Hearing none, do you want to make some comments, Mr. Corman? You're more than welcome to.
Some of the public comments I will address during the site plan conditional use, but one thing, this is the preliminary plat, which is this proposed streets, and so the proposed street of Morgan Street there, that runs north and south, the right-of-way would be up against the property line of Forest Ridge subdivision. That would be part of the street right-of-way at that point. The street, due to terrain as well as constructivity, most of it's going to be lower than the lots there in Forest Ridge until you get down to lot 123, then it's going to be about level. But the rest of them are all going to be lower. This development is all lower than Forest Ridge for the most part. So the stormwater drains to the west and to the south. There are two inlets right at the end of Bruni Parkway. Currently, we would tie into those, but then those go down and then go right into the lake there that's jointly owned by the applicant and the city of Warrenton. So that would be the only thing, and it would not go into the Bruni Business Park Stormwater Detention Basin. This is on the lower side of that. So that would not be there. Question was asked, where's the sidewalk going to be at on Morgan there? It will be on the west side due to the fact of that terrain and that lower, and there are going to be some spots there that actual terrain between Forest Ridge and the street are going to be rip-wrapped for grade stability. So when you get into construction plans, that will be shown on that. So wanted to address that. Others I will address when it comes time to be appropriate for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Corman. All right, we'll close our public hearing on the subdivision and move on to the Forest Ridge Townhomes Conditional Use Permit 77 and Site Plan 152. Mr. Graville? This will be our last public hearing for this evening. Then we'll reconvene next. No, I'm just teasing.
Chris Graville, City Attorney, here in the City of Warrenton. I am here presenting, as a preliminary matter, I'd ask the municipal code be made a part of the record by reference. The public hearing advertisement for this public hearing tonight be made a part of the record by reference. The correspondence between the city and the developer and the correspondence between the city and any citizens be made a part of the record by reference. The planning and zoning officer's report and prior drafts of the report be made a part of the record by reference. This is the request for a conditional use permit for the R3 High Density Residential District. Lewis and Beatty, on behalf of Ben Beckemeyer Construction, has applied for a conditional use permit and site plan approval for 13.32 acres of land on the west side of South Morgan Street. The conditional use permit is requested to allow for multifamily dwellings units to be constructed on 17 proposed lots, 16 fourplexes and 1 duplex. The R3 district defines multifamily and duplexes as conditional uses in Appendix A of the zoning code. This request has been submitted in conjunction with the preliminary plat to subdivide the existing tracts into 17 lots. Comprehensive plan, the future land use plan within the Warrenton Comprehensive Plan designates the subject site as single-family residential. The comprehensive plan notes that new residential subdivisions should meld into existing neighborhoods. We talked about the zoning analysis. What I really want to get into is the conditional use permit. This is going to be a little long-winded. However, I want to go through not only the condition section, but also city's comment, because I think there's some important points staff wants to make here. The conditional use permit will be consistent with the policies and intent of the Warrenton Comprehensive Plan and the Warrenton zoning regulations. And this is staff's comment. The subject site is designated as single-family residential in the comprehensive plan. The proposal requests a conditional use permit for a multifamily development. The comprehensive plan notes a density for this land use category of 3 to 5 dwellings per acre. The proposal includes 66 units on 13.32 acres for a density of just under 5 units per acre, which is on the higher side of the 3 to 5. While the proposal for multifamily dwellings is not consistent with the comprehensive plan designation of single-family residential, the proposed roadway network and density is consistent with the plan. So that's just one of the conditions. However, the density is on the higher end of the range, something that this body can consider. The conditional use will not increase flood or water damage hazard to adjoining properties. Preliminary design addresses stormwater through an existing pond to the south, as well as a new retention on the west side of the subject site. The conditional use will not generate noise that exceeds the sound levels that are typical of uses permitted in the district. The request for residential development is not anticipated to result in sound levels differing from adjacent residential developments. Adequate access, roads or entrances and exit drives will be designated and provided to prevent traffic hazards and minimize traffic congestion at the site. 2 connections to the public streets are proposed by extending Bruni Parkway and South Morgan Street to the subject site. Street right-of-way and pavement width in the vicinity of the conditional use is or will be adequate for traffic reasonably expected to be generated by the proposed use. On this one, staff was, I would say, unanimous. And we have a real issue there with Morgan Street. This site will be served extending South Morgan Street into the site, as well as extending Bruni Parkway into the site. Prior development along the corridor has noted concerns with the additional traffic onto South Morgan Street without improvement to the roadway to accommodate the additional demands placed on the infrastructure. The proposal shows extension of the roadway into the site. However, staff would note concerns with the off-site sections of the roadway to accommodate the increased intensity. As you guys are aware, Mr. Beckermeyer brought and represented the other neighboring development of single-family residential homes to the site. This body discussed and Board of Aldermen discussed at length the inadequacy of Morgan Street, which is now serves a couple of homes. Now it will serve many more homes with some additional traffic. One of the things that this body considered when that development went in was only allowing him to develop a certain amount of homes until the additional roadway by Mr. Wolf that was proposed and additional connections would be available to mitigate this traffic on Morgan Street until a plan for improvement of that roadway, which even Mr. Beckermeyer has recognized as inadequate, was done. That was not approved by the Board of Aldermen, so all those homes are approved to be built as it exists right now. And the staggered approach to the building permits was not approved, so all those homes can go in. And we as a staff have very serious concerns about the adequacy of Morgan Street although this may be a good project, but where it is right now, is it appropriate to add this additional traffic on Morgan Street and for its inadequacy under this condition. Glare of stationary or vehicular lights from the conditional use will not adversely affect the character of the neighborhood. We could not see any negative impacts that were anticipated. The conditional use will not have any substantial adverse effect upon the use or enjoyment of adjacent nearby property or conditions affecting the public health, safety, and welfare. The primary concern with the impact of the proposed development is the additional strain on existing roadways, i.e. South Morgan Street. While the inclusion of the connection to Bruni Parkway lessens the demands placed on South Morgan Street. Overall intensity in the area does raise, we believe, serious concerns with the continued intensity of development proposed to be served by the existing infrastructure. Until that roadway is built, it may not be appropriate to add any, until we know what it looks like with the development Mr. Beckmeyer brought through earlier this year. It may not be appropriate to approve any residential development until a improvement plan, which is one of the things the city is working on. I've talked to some of the commissioners about working on a new improvement plan and working with the Board of Aldermen to get that funded and get that figured out for Morgan Street, because it is woefully, there is a concern it's woefully inadequate for the development without a clear plan of when those houses are going to be built and when those additional access roads to this area of the city will be constructed. The conditional use will be designed, constructed, and operated so as not to interfere with the I just read that one. In the case of existing structures to be converted to a use requiring a conditional use permit, the structure shall meet all fire, health, safety, building, plumbing, and electrical requirements of the city. All new structures will be reviewed for compliance with the applicable code. Conditional use otherwise complies with all applicable regulations of this chapter. The proposal will comply with all applicable regulations. The site plan, it's pretty much the same analysis. We do have a staff recommendation. Staff has reviewed the proposed conditional use and site plan. South Morgan Street is not currently designed for the intended intensity of development occurring along this corridor. There are no capital improvements currently planned, although they are being discussed and have been discussed by this body and also the Board of Aldermen for this segment of the city, which will result in continued degradation of services. As such, conditional use permit criteria number 5 has not been met, and staff recommends denial of the request unless a plan for improvement to South Morgan Street is programmed. Now, I want to make sure that this is very clear. We do not believe as a staff that this project can meet the requirements of a conditional use permit in the city of Warrenton because of the inadequacy of South Morgan Street. Because of the project that Mr. Beckermeyer already brought in, and the, really, when is that project going to be developed? When is the traffic patterns going to hit? We just do not think it is appropriate to approve this conditional use permit at this time because of the inadequacy of that service street and the effect on neighboring properties. I can answer any questions if anybody has any.
I can ask it now, I suppose. We have multiple items that are, multiple agenda items that have 3 components. We got the subdivision requirement, the conditional use requirement, and then the final site plan. We talked about this site plan in particular on this one, and my question is, we break this property up into individual lots, most of which are going to be, or would be occupied by single structure of 4 living units each. One would be 2 living units each. When we vote on a plat, for instance, so we're voting on the infrastructure, we're voting on the layout, the lot lines, the location of hydrants, etc., easements, whatever. Are we also approving, if we recommend approval, that each of those lots is appropriate for 4 living units in a single structure?
No. You only do that when you approve the conditional use permit. So voting in consideration for these 2 components or 3 components is ultimately we'll look at the agenda as we roll through this, when we get to the discussion and voting part, but we should agenda-wise tackle the conditional use permit first and site plan. Really the conditional use permit, then the site plan, for purposes of really addressing, because if the conditional use permit doesn't get approved, there's no reason to vote. It essentially swallows it up and kills the preliminary plat.
And that was kind of the reason for my question, is the subdivision question itself, where you're breaking 13 acres into multiple different lots, in and of itself could be brought before us with or without a development proposal, and wouldn't necessarily have some of the same objections that some of these residents have
Sure,
brought to us.
absolutely.
As when it's shown that it's a subdivision with multifamily, for instance.
Correct.
So, just as I sat here thinking through this, it, to a certain extent, kind of seems backward that if we're committing to, oh, well, we saw this subdivision and it showed all of these multi-unit structures, and you approved the subdivision, therefore it implies you approve the multi-unit. I didn't want to lead ourselves down that path.
It can get confusing, and I think, you know, we've had some really good participating members of the public, and I appreciate them being educated on, you know, each of the agenda items have a technical component from the city code, and some of these are just, yep, it meets code, let's approve. Some of them are discussion items, like the conditional use permit. Does it meet, can you all find that the conditional use permit for Forest Ridge, or what is it Forest Ridge Townhomes, meets condition number 5? You know, you said on this body when the lengthy discussions and review of the prior subdivision right next door, right down the street, was discussed, and can that infrastructure take that point on? But you are correct that the plat should not go before in the consideration or discussion, because why would you approve something design-wise when you haven't even considered whether or not you want this to go there, or what really truly on the conditional use, whether it meets the code criteria to, at this time, to even be there, or to even for it to be developed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gorman?
For the record, Bart Corman, Lewis and Beatty, Surveyors and Engineers. Ben Beckemeyer with Ben Beckemeyer LLC is here. Ben Beckemeyer Construction LLC is here. The proposed developer on this. So we're proposing townhomes here. It's an R3 zoned property. It has been zoned R3 for quite some time. Many of the properties nearby it are as well zoned R3. So multifamily is what fits in that zoning. Anyway, so we talked about the subdivision, and so we'd have individual lots to put these townhomes on, but they would have to stay, as current city code, they would have to stay 4 units on one piece of property, because this is a new development, so it doesn't fall under the grandfather clause that we've had at Warrior Ridge and other places where we could divide each unit, so that each unit could be actually fee simply owned in title. So they would be mostly rentals and not owned. Obviously, you wouldn't own occupy all of them anyway, because unless you got a really big family. So anyway, so that's answering some of the questions that we had there before.
Bart, can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
So we talked about this when we discussed this originally.
Yeah, we had a meeting with staff on that, yeah.
So is the idea that each lot will be owned by one person or LLC that will have its own homeowners association, or what's going to be that? Because you know you cannot come in and subdivide these. I want to make that clear.
Correct, right, yeah. Right now, current code, we cannot subdivide each of those lots any further. So it would give the developer the option to sell each of them.
A fourplex?
A fourplex to some, or for the developer to sub another LLC for each one of them for tax purposes or whatever.
And they could all be members or something.
But they could all be members, right. But we could not subdivide each unit like we have in other places in the city, which we pleaded with staff a month and a half ago on a meeting to see if there was open for a code change, but.
Well, but
understand, but we know that going in.
Yes,
right.
I know. I just wanted to
And
make
so,
sure, yeah.
so after that meeting, we had a discussion and we're still moving forward. Otherwise, it would have been a lot nicer, but we understand that, and we understand that situation, so, yeah. And anyway, and then to address some of the Morgan Street concerns, you know, Morgan Street, the thoroughfare plan has that. I was here almost a year ago when we did a boundary adjustment plat for Huey Road Heaver to the north here and this piece, and talked about securing that right away for Morgan to extend down. Talking with Mr. Beckermeyer, he'd love not to connect up to Morgan Street and just come off of Bruni Parkway, but that's not consistent with the thoroughfare plan that the city has. So he's going to, provide a 26-foot wide concrete street throughout this portion of the property, which if you look at it, Lot 10, north of there's 300-foot flag that was reserved there that he would have to connect into too. So any further than that would warrant some discussion with Mr. Beckermeyer on what he could do with Morgan further north of this tract. But that being said, we are still reserving a piece to the south there if the city wants to extend it further on south. We're putting cul-de-sacs so that all but Lot 10 fronts its own internal cul-de-sacs and not onto Morgan, so that it alleviates a lot of backing out onto Morgan. So we didn't want to do that. So that's why some of the layouts there. We put parking in front of all the townhomes. We put mailboxes on each of the 2 cul-de-sacs, so you wouldn't even have to go from one cul-de-sac to the other to get your mail. Streetlights were added at the cul-de-sacs and intersections to meet code. We talked to the fire department, and we will put a fire hydrant near Lot 10 because of the distance requirements there. But that's what we got. Any other questions? Stormwaters, we talked about in the subdivision process that it'd be taken care of with a stormwater basin to the west and to the shared lake to the south. Quite frankly, probably most of this water could have went to the shared lake, but we had a little room down there next to the creek to do this, to separate that out and to have an additional stormwater method. Yes, we would have to connect to Bruni Parkway for its main access. And I don't know what else I can say, but I'll answer any questions anybody may have.
Thank you, Mr. Corman. Does anyone want one last chance to speak tonight?
Just a couple quick things again, David Bolte. So I live right at lot 132, and I mean, still haven't gotten an answer yet on how far we're talking property line to Morgan Street in between we're going there, because I mean, looking at it, doesn't look like much there.
Well, I think you made the comment that it was the street right away from the property line to the street, and I don't know how many feet is that in the.
It'll be 12 foot between the property line and edge of pavement.
Right.
Okay. Another thing is, I mean, I work in town. I do different installs and stuff, so I drive through a lot of neighborhoods. I've seen a lot of these townhome subdivisions, and when you come into them, like let's look at I believe it's Sapphire and Granite right off Highway U. A, it's not even completely developed. It's been in development, since 05, 06, 07. They've never even finished building those townhomes. And when you go in, drive over there, you've got about the same type of parking, and yet it's not even sufficient enough for them. They're having to park in those cul-de-sacs that aren't even filled. So, I mean, just in my own family, I know I've got we got 3 cars at our house, and you're talking people are going to probably have maybe a few more. So you're going to need off-street parking, and where's all that off-street parking going to go? Is it going to just be able to stay in their little cul-de-sacs? By the looks of it, doesn't look like it. Are they going to be coming up on the Bruni Parkway and parking? They're going to be trying to find spots on Forest Ridge Drive and Forest Ridge Court to get parking spots? Because, I mean, it just doesn't look like there's going to be enough parking for everyone that's truly going to be living there. I mean, you got people coming, you're going to have people visiting, and you're going to have people who have more than 2 cars, period, that they're going to need more than 2 parking spots. I'm just concerned with a lot of those few things that are on there. I mean, again, I want to see development back there. I think single-family homes is really the way we should go. But continue on to the subdivision, add some more side streets. You can get a few more homes back in there. Townhomes just ain't the way to go. It's just going to decrease property value, and we got townhomes we haven't even finished building yet. I mean, that's been approved, and those lots just sit vacant. So is that what we're planning on doing again? We're gonna start another townhome project that's supposed to have to be finished, but then they decide not to finish it, and now we just have empty lots sitting again.
Question for you.
Mr. Bolte, one question.
The development you're referring to on Highway U, what did you call it?
I believe it's the Granite Court and Sapphire Court.
Oh, okay, so
Right
Stone
after,
Meadows. Okay.
right there on the
Okay.
left-hand side, right after
I
the.
remember it well.
I mean, you can go there.
We've
It's-
been here a while.
Yeah, it's definitely not finished being developed, so.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bolte. Mr. Boozy Cruz.
Good evening. Brad Boozy Cruz, 319 South Morgan. I got a couple, I know the sewer issue has not still been addressed, and if my mind is correct, all this sewer is going to go down to that same sewer line that we're doing the study on that we haven't got yet, and we got 98 up more homes that are going to be attached to that, to the sewer line and the whole thing. So before I think you could do anything, I think you all would want to see that study done, and before you approving anything, because we sure don't want it to start out like the other one did with the clear cutting of the ground and it just sitting there now. And DNR still speak with Morgan quite frequently about it still, so problems still aren't done yet. So the right-of-way you keep talking about, they keep talking about, who's going to maintain that road right-of-way? Is that going to be the city? Does that be a city road right-of-way? And if so, he's talking about Shot Rock. Is this, is this something that we're going to have to maintain, or is he going to maintain this? The other thing was it says it's 13.2 acres. You got 2.9 in common ground, and I'm not sure on the west side there's a lot of ground down there that is common ground, I guess, is going to be. So it's really, what, 9 point some odd acres this development is setting on. And then the common ground, once these units are sold, who's responsible for taking care of this? If each unit, if it's not a homeowners association, each lot is owned individually by its own little corporation, who's going to be responsible for all this ground? It's common ground. Just kind of putting it out there if it's not all done in one time. But and then the road now that so it looks like Morgan's kind of out of the picture then if he can't finish the road going down to tie it in there. He's only going to go halfway and stop. Kind of strange for me if a developer only builds half a road to connect to a road. I mean, if you're going to do the project, do it right and do it all. So that's another cost the city's going to have to incur then to do that last couple hundred feet of roadway there that we're going to have to do. And let's see, what else was there? The common ground, the easements, and the sewer, I guess, and then the road. I mean, Morgan Street, you all know what it's been. You all been down there. You all know what it's about. So that's about all I have for right now.
Thank you, Mr. Boozy.
Thank you.
Last call.
Alexander Francis for the record again. Just one last point I want to make here. Along with what we had heard and stated, that there's about a 12-foot section from concrete to the property line of especially our properties here on Forest Ridge subdivision. One of my main concerns is there's a confrontation, if you will, in the statement that says that glare and sound will not be an indicating factor. If you look at these plots, and he brought up a good point about parking, especially in these cul-de-sacs. A lot of these individuals are going to be parking on the street. I want to make it known that a good majority of our homes, all the windows are in the rear. There is maybe one window on the front of these homes going down Forest Ridge. Glare, and it's going to be a big indicating factor with headlights shining with only 12 feet from the plat before it hits concrete of our property line, especially if all those trees are cleared out. So I just kind of wanted to throw that in there as an extra thing.
Thank you, Mr. Francis. Appreciate your. Mr. Heidel?
One last time, guys.
That's fine, thank you. You're fine. Appreciate you.
Okay, I agree with the glare. We're going to have that for sure, because all of our windows are on the back. Like you said, we probably have 2 windows out front. One question I had, and I know this is probably a little early, is the townhomes that are going to be built, are they 2-story or single-story homes? That will definitely affect a few things. 2, there's 66 homes that are going to be there, times 2 vehicles per home, let's say. So you're talking 122 vehicles. Again, I'm not that good at math, but that's a lot of vehicles in these small areas. And I know our driveways can barely fit 2 vehicles on them now. There's going to be a lot of people parking in the street. So once they can't fit on the street, they're going to be moving down to probably Broome. Another thing, I'm assuming, and I am assuming, but these homes are probably going to be fairly small, 2-bedroom homes. Again, we want families to move into our area to be part of our community for a long time. That's why I moved here. If it's a 2-bedroom home, families are only going to be there for a little bit. As they grow, they're going to move out. Again, I think single-family homes is the way to go. If it was zoned for that, I think it should stay that way. We can get people in here, nice homes. I don't care if they're $600,000 homes. Get those type of people in here, and let's grow the community into a better community. It's going to increase everybody's property value.
You made a comment about your single-family home having 2 parking spots on the driveway, and that isn't sufficient. Am I correct? Do all of the residences currently in Forest Ridge also have a 2-car or a garage of some sort for parking?
Yes.
Okay. And you're saying even with that, it's
Even with
still
that.
not sufficient, there's cars on the street?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
State your name, sweetheart.
Aaron Good.
Say it again.
Aaron Good.
Thank you, Ms. Good.
I just wanted to.
Microphone down.
I just wanted to state for the record that I disagree with the city's assessment that the lights will not be a bother to our properties. I don't think anybody even looked at our properties when they made that assessment because literally our master bedrooms, our living rooms, everything is along that property line. And if you look at the north cul-de-sac, it actually, those lights are going to shine directly into my master bedroom. And that's all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I think what I remember, and Mr. Graville's
Yeah,
getting ready to comment, that the gradation of this property is down below a little
Yeah.
bit, and that's where you guys were taking place. Is that correct?
Yes, and I also want to say, you know, we look at it from a technical perspective about uses that are similar glare type. I mean, if you live in a residential area, you expect residential glares, right? And I think this is the type, that's the city's, it's a technical analysis, correct? This is more coloring of that analysis to give you some additional detail of, well, it, you know, it's in there, but we interpret it from a technical level, not from a neighbor or property owner level.
Correct.
So it's absolutely within the criteria. I don't think there's a conflict there. That's, once again, it's a technical analysis from use-based, you know, is this consistent with the use of additional glare? So if you put a, what's that golf thing in Chesterfield? If you put one of those up with lights all over it, that is not a use that would be consistent glare-wise with what they have. Right.
Are you indicating that there is a Topgolf coming to Warrenton?
No, that's Midtown St. Louis coming there.
Midtown St. Louis, we'll
That's
see.
right.
I'd be surprised, but
Okay.
I'm sure the city will give them money to go there.
Yeah. Anybody else? Last call. Go ahead, Mr. Corman. You have the floor. You have the last rebuttal. And we appreciate your patience tonight.
No problem. Wrap this up pretty quick. These are 3-bedroom units. They are 2 stories, basically the same as Warrior Ridge. Mr. Beckemeyer built a couple of those over there just recently, so you can look at that. The common ground would be maintained by the association, so that's the case. And there's common ground there that we could potentially swap with the city in lieu of park fees, but we did not propose that at this time because we did not want to confuse any additional issues present there. So all the common ground would be maintained by the association at this point in time. And that's really all I have unless you have
So
more questions.
you said they're 2 stories?
Yeah, they're 2 stories.
3 bedrooms. Is there a garage?
No garage.
How deep are those? How deep are those parking spots? Single car depth?
So the parking spots will meet your city standard. Actually, I got them drawn as 10 by 20s, even though we can go to now to 9 by 19s. I got them 10 by 20s just to give space between it, because 9 by 19s is really too small for large parking areas, especially out here when everybody's got a Suburban and a pickup truck. But those parking stalls will be lined up in front of the units off the street there. These, because of the new R3 zoning requirements, these buildings sit back 10 feet further than Warrior Ridge. Because if you remember, the old R3 zoning was a 20-foot front setback. Now the R3 zoning is a 30-foot setback, if I'm not mistaken. And so therefore, they're going to actually set back a little further than what you see over at Warrior Ridge. So just kind of put that into perspective if you're looking at that. So,
Art, I had just a couple, and a lot of these speakers have kind of hit on areas that I had noted when I reviewed this. I think what Mr. Boozy Cruz was alluding to is when calculating density, when so much of this property, 2.6 and 1.3 acres, are not actually for the physical structures, is the density actually at 5 or just below? Or should we consider that density to be a calculation of the area that they're actually building on?
Right. If you consider that density, the density is a recommendation, and your city attorney will be able to advise you on that. But yeah, I mean, if you wanted to just do lots for density per acre on that, then it would be more dense, obviously, because we'd lose a little over 4 acres of common ground in that calculation. So it's over a quarter of the total acreage. So and that density. So it would change. Probably most likely over that 5 calculation. I've not done that calculation. The one thing to note though is the minimum lot size for a fourplex townhome is 12,500, and all these lots are larger than that, or that size or larger. So we are meeting that minimum requirement, but not on the density requirement for the overall. Yeah, but if you started to take that out, but then that's not necessarily the intent of density either when you get down to it. But yeah.
Then one other point that I wanted to talk about, and I actually drove out a couple of times to Stone Ledge. Yeah, I think we all know the condos out across.
It's been a while, but yeah.
I drove over to the Townhomes in Warrior Ridge. And one thing that I noted, and it seems that is the case on this, those parking spots extend all the way out to the curb and gutter of the street. So what I observe in these higher density areas is one of two things happen. When the vehicles for those areas exceed the number of parking lots, they either overhang into the street or over the sidewalk and try and cram 2 cars in a 1-car slot, or they find a place to park alongside a curb somewhere. It seems, especially on Street A, well, actually now both of them are developed up and down both sides. There is no specific curb necessarily to park against, which would lead me to believe, and when I went out to Stone Ledge, that's what I saw. Multiple vehicles parked on the undeveloped portions. So, I mean, it brings my concern of, are they going to be parking up on the curb on Morgan Street? I don't know where guests would park, or when Dad gets a work vehicle, a third vehicle, I don't know where that overflow goes on this plan.
Right. There's not a design of...
Just keep talking.
I'll just keep talking. I'll just talk loud. There you go. So there's not a design for like a certain overflow lot or whatever. We're just meeting the minimum of two spaces per unit.
Okay.
We actually have a few more than the minimum requirement because we have 5 ADA spaces, and so we basically took the minimum requirement and added that 5 spaces and some change. So 132 spaces are required. We have 138. However, 5 of those are ADA. Okay? So we wanted to make sure that if he didn't have a single ADA person in the whole place, that they would still meet two spaces per unit. So it's a technicality. We could actually meet the code with less, but we went ahead and did that for that same concern. And then with this many units, there's usually a vacancy or two, throughout the time and process. So there will always kind of be a one or two spaces. Normally in these situations, one of those 2 spaces is a designated space. So unit A has 1 designated spot. The other spot is a free-for-all, so that you can't have that overflow. That's how most of them are set up, because if you designated all of them, then you would have to have an overflow lot of some sort.
And then I promise last one. So there's no garage, there's no designed outside storage. Are these planned to be on a basement or a slab?
There'll be a slab. Yeah, there'll be a slab. So it won't have the basement lower level and then single level at street level. It's going to be street level and then one above.
So no space to store bicycles or garbage cans or?
Yeah, I mean, they'll have a backyard, and they just have that little front porch there, but it's not really set for a storage.
A couple other questions that were brought up, just to make sure. I know that a big issue in this area has been the sewer. I don't know where we stand on that as a city. Mr. Graville, if you want to address that too, where we stand on the sewer situation. Are we still in that's been a...
We're in the engineering stages.
Yep, didn't mean to overlook you, sir.
We're in the engineering stages of getting the sewer capacity upgraded up to approximately that last development that been proposed. So we're about 50% on those plans. We're looking at, if everything goes away, we could be bidding in the spring to get that project started. So
that's Mr. John Struckoff, for the record, our Director of Operations. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Mr. Graville.
I'm actually glad he answered, because I was just going to make up an answer.
I know you were. That's what I like about you.
And I'll compliment that answer. There's no way we're going to build these all out super fast to beat that construction timeline, as well as we'd have to get a permit from the city and DNR for that. So we would have to piggyback their permitting process for that capacity on that line. And there's a possibility that we actually build some of this in phases if we have to, especially negotiating on the Morgan Street issue. So that's a possibility. So we wouldn't be putting all units in before fall, before we'd have a sewer line.
Building on that
for capacity.
Mr. Struckoff, building on that as well. I know you had mentioned that Mr. Beckmeyer would probably take responsibility for building the street up to code in the part that he is going to be building on, but then there's going to be a gap. That really doesn't fix the problem that we're facing on this situation on Morgan Street. And I don't think we should be building anything on Morgan Street until we get the road to the point where, that's just my personal opinion.
So we do have a proposal that we haven't done anything with yet for an engineer to come in and evaluate what we would actually need to do for the road. We haven't brought that forward yet. Right. We just got that. So, we're talking about it, but we need an engineer to tell us exactly what needs to be done to bring it up to code.
I just think that sometimes, we just don't want to put the cart before the horse and build something that we can't. And it's been mentioned, even when we look at Stone Meadows and it's still not completed. So my other question that was brought up too, and this is a big concern to me as well, that it brought up by Mr. Boozy Cruz, all the common ground. The way that this has been talked about tonight, Mr. Costello buys one, Mr. Cornell buys one, I buy one.
I'm not buying.
But I know you're not buying one, but just play along.
I'm not buying one if you are.
I'm tapped. Yeah, you're right. If it's just me and Scott,
who's going to take care of that? Who's responsible for taking care of that common ground? That's a great question, because I know, like in past, if the guy owns the whole thing, he's in charge. We could, but now if everybody owns their own thing, that's going to be. I don't know how's that work. You tell me.
So in this case, because we're having a subdivision, it's just going to be very similar to a single-family subdivision in that case, where there's going to be an association for the master subdivision itself.
Okay.
And then those covenants can dictate if it's going to be the entire, each lot as well or not. Most likely not. It's probably just going to be the common ground, and then each lot will have their own maintenance, which would be fourplexes. Now, if someone buys the whole block, then obviously they're going to probably maintain it all through that. And so that's the situation, but it's all up to the covenants that they write up, and that's an answer that I can't answer what those details are on that.
Yeah.
But it could be. It could be either way.
Well, I'm still confused. So my daughter lives in a townhome, and which I'm glad she does instead of a single family home. Dad doesn't have to take trips to Jeff City to fix things. So the association takes care of anything outside they take care of.
Right, snow removal.
Right.
Grass.
Is that what we're talking about here, though? Even though
That's not what they're talking about.
Exactly.
That is a condominium that has an association that's set up. What they're talking about is they're splitting it up into lots.
Right.
So, Barton LLC could buy one fourplex, and then you will be responsible to maintain it like it's just your house.
Exactly.
Right? This is not the structure of duplexes and quadplexes that we envision in future development. This is really the second part left over from an ownership group. Like, eventually we'd like all these type of developments to go into a planned unit district, which is unified ownership. I know Bart doesn't like hearing this, but I gave him a heads up before. Unified ownership, we can negotiate some of these additional conditions like, fencing and whatnot. But they are allowed under the code to submit this proposal in this format. But it's not what you were saying where the association, you basically own the interior wall and they take care of everything.
Yes.
That is truly a condominium. That's when they call them townhouses, like what your daughter lives in, that's organized under Missouri law as a condominium association, not as a homeowners.
As far as the common ground, the way you're describing it, Bart, is no different than me living in my subdivision. I take care of my own property and I pay into a fund, and that fund maintains the common ground. This would be similar if you consider each one of those fourplexes a single unit.
Correct, and that's why, because that's what we're proposing the subdivision.
Gotcha.
For that, because, and basically what this does is it allows you to construct a few, sell a few as you go along. Somebody can be a landlord for 4 units so that you can build this out. If you wanted to build all this out all under one ownership, it takes a little bit better of a credit rating to get that done.
Right.
So that's why we're proposing in this manner.
And then, Mr. Struckoff, somewhere in these notes, and I can't find it, there was staff comments about Morgan Street as it extended. There was concerns that it was taking a path that hadn't been previously considered, and there was concern that it would be running into the pond. Did I dream that? Is that?
Correct.
Okay.
Originally, on the original plan, he had stubbed it out just a little bit. There's a pond south of that is part of our park, but he removed that stub out.
Okay.
So it just stops right there at Bruni.
Thank you.
Good catch. Good catch, rookie. I'm impressed.
I do my homework, not like when I was in school. I do my homework now.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Corman. All right. We will now close our public hearings and comments for tonight. And
Real quick. Pursuant to Commissioner Costello's point, I do believe that item number 3 and item number 6, I would ask a motion be made by the commission to move those to the bottom of the agenda, because I think to Commissioner Costello's, if we don't do that, we're going to consider something we have to approve, and we haven't even considered if we want to approve the actual development. So it would be to move, a motion to move number 3 and number 6 to the bottom of the agenda, and then we'll just go 1, 2, 4, 5, 7, 8.
3, 6.
3, 6, yeah.
And I appreciate that out of consideration for those that are here on the C-store development. Would it possibly make more sense to move 3 after 5?
Yes.
And then if they want to hang around for the rest of the fun, they can. And then move
So go-
6 below
All right.
8.
So we're going 1, 2, 4, 5, 3, 7, 8, 6.
I would like to make a motion to amend the agenda.
For what Rich said.
We have a motion by Mr. Costello to amend the agenda, and second by Mr. Cooper to rearrange things from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 to 1, 2, 4, 5, 3, 7, 8, 6. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. That's how I do my math.
All right. Roll call vote.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Costello?
Yes.
Mr. Deitch and Mr. Cullum is absent. Mr. Barton?
Yes.
Mr. Durbin?
Yes.
Mr. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Priest is absent. Mr. Dieneman?
Yes.
Mr. Cornell?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 with 3 absent. All right. So we will now close the public hearing and comments and open up our meeting for tonight. Welcome to our meeting. So our meeting tonight will start with our minutes from our last meeting, which was November the 4th, 2021 P&Z meeting, which lasted a total of 5 minutes. And we're paying for it tonight. But that's good. That's what we're here for. Anybody have any questions or comments about the minutes from last month? Entertain a motion.
I move that we accept the minutes as read. Second.
Motion by Mr. Cooper, second by Mr. Miller to approve the minutes as read. Any questions or comments? Roll call vote.
Mr. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Dieneman?
Yes.
Mr. Cornell?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Costello?
Yes.
Mr. Barton?
Yes.
Mr. Durbin?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0, 3 absence. We'll move on to our second thing, and that'll be the East Walton Living PUD 79.
All right, so we already went through this in the discussion. Can we pull up that report one more time? So this is the one that staff is recommending denial of approval of this.
Right.
Going back to the conclusion on the recommendation, there's concerns with regards to transfer of ownership and the conditions with the leases. Typically we see, the planned unit developments we've seen come in thus far have been undeveloped property where it's a total construction of it, although this does meet the criteria. It's a little bit different because you have the existing commercial building with this 0.91 acres that they want to add these units on. And staff does not believe that this development meets the intent of the PUD standards, and we do not believe, and I think it's pretty clear in the comprehensive plan that this district, it's not consistent with the plan, because one of the things is really important under our comp plan, the way it's designed, is you don't want to put single-family residential in the middle of industrial because it creates use conflicts, right? If you put a single-family residential house right in the middle of an industrially zoned area, what's going to happen when the soy sauce factory goes in there or something that creates, people are going to say, well, I don't want that because that wasn't here when I was there before. That's how we traditionally think about it, as we look at it from a residential perspective. But to preserve our industrial and commercial corridors, you want to also look at it from a reverse perspective to say, we want to keep this commercial, we want to keep this industrial. And so our concern is it's not consistent with that aspect, that protocol in the comp plan of including this residential in this commercial area for this particular piece of property.
Is the PUD, would that be appropriately used if, say, this piece of property, there was a small piece that it wasn't practical to put a strip mall on, to put a more conforming use on, then a PUD could be considered to put a structure that would at least utilize the land, even though it's not necessarily a conforming use.
Yes, absolutely. It's a flexible district when really the purpose of the PUD is when, and we went through that criteria, when you can't fit it in another code, but it's just so exceptional that, man, this is a really great idea to fill this void and to put this in there. And I don't want to say this project is not exceptional because it's designed in all these elements, but you know, from a planning technical perspective, you have a commercial shopping center, the loading docks are in the back. No planning perspective makes sense to plop the single-family residential right behind it.
And that's what we do.
Multifamily.
And that's our job here, is to plan. And
Your job is to make sure that we are planning to avoid conflicts.
Right.
So question for you, Mr. Graville. You know, historically, we've taken the approach when we make motions to make them in the affirmative, but I think when we're looking at one like this where staff review has recommended denial based on a number of factors, would it be more appropriate to make a motion recommending denial?
Sure.
And noting the deficiencies?
Yes, I think to
Specifically?
articulate that, that's fine. I mean, I always prefer to make it in the affirmative because it gets confusing. And I say that all the time, but if you're going, because you're really kind of making it in the affirmative, incorporating the staff recommendations, I'm perfectly fine with that if that's something the commission wants to consider.
And one of the other things that, as I was looking over and being familiar with the community, having grown up here, as a lot of you have, and some of the members of the audience have, you know, that intersection at East Walton and Cool was basically the only entrance in my day to bus parking and school parking and the pickup and drop off for all the kids. Obviously now, because the district's grown and we've got schools all over town, it's a little bit different, but I still have some concerns with the way that traffic goes, because you still have parents doing drop off in the morning, pick up at afternoon. You still have buses coming in and out, and putting residential in that space where you're adding vehicles dumping onto East Walton, that up to this point, nothing comes onto East Walton from that side of that piece of property. Everything's coming out on either on 47 or along Highway M. So I do have some concerns with that. I didn't really see that in the staff notes, but I think that's a critical factor as well.
As probably the only member of this board that still does daily drop-off at the middle school, that is a legitimate concern.
Anybody got anything else?
anybody guys, any other questions? Entertain a motion.
So I would make a motion to recommend not approving the plan unit development for East Walton Living PUD 79 based upon staff recommendation, noting that the request for PUD is not, that this request is not consistent with PUD, is not consistent with the comprehensive plan in general, and noting concerns regarding transportation and the proximity to the school.
Make a second.
We have motion by Mr. Costello, second by Mr. Cornell, to not approve this. And when we do a roll call vote, you would vote yes if you agree not to vote for this. Any other questions or comments? Roll call vote.
Mr. Barton?
Yes.
Mr. Durbin?
Yes.
Mr. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Dieterman?
Yes.
Mr. Cornell?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Costello?
Yes.
Motion passes to deny that, 7-0. And just before we get started and anyone leaves, all this will come in front of the board on what night?
No, December 21st, I believe. Hold on just a 21st, December 21st.
December 21st is the next meeting. So get plenty of rest. All right. So that's the East Walton Living. So we're going to move on past number 3 and go down to number 4. The 2.81 acres with the convenience store, car wash, and restaurant conditional use permit, -78.
So this was discussed in the public hearing. There was a lot of discussion about it. I will note there was a couple of conditions that were talked about for consideration.
Here's the ones I wrote down. The conditions, stormwater plan,
Yep.
trash plan,
Yep.
shrubs,
Yeah, along the southern edge.
On the southern edge. But I think they'd agreed to do even more if that's necessary.
I think they've already added to their site plan.
Yeah.
But he was talking about, yeah, on that backside, in between the homes and.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you can add that.
Yeah.
We had the right in, right out on Highway 47.
And then limited hours.
If you're, the two items, are the items to consider are the hour, because there is a site plan that you can add conditions on, so you can consider hours of operation for the entirety of the operation, or you can break it up, depending on how you want to do it. If you want to put conditions in the operation of the gas station, that'll be on the site plan, which we're on the conditional use permit. So for this one, we would be considering conditions for the restaurant and the car wash for hours of operation.
On number 4?
Yes.
And I don't mean
in the site plan, you can consider conditions on the hours of operation.
And I don't mean to throw this out there and open up another can of worms, but I know we kept referencing Casey's a little bit during this discussion too. And I remember during Casey's, but the difference between this property and Casey's property is Casey's is right in the middle of residential.
That's right up to it.
It had a depth that went back.
Right. So one of the big concerns that we had with Casey's, and I remember, and they did a very nice job with this, even with the rebuild, is that they put that kind of lighting.
Directional.
Well, because the depth of this lot, the Casey's was a very shallow lot.
Right.
And the residential comes, I think, on the other side all the way up to the pavement, or all the way up to 47. So it's 3 houses affected, so we had different lighting, and the noise was a concern because it really was the opening lot to that subdivision.
Right. Is lighting going to be a concern at this place to an extent where it's going to be? I mean, I will tell you, there's, with the street lights, even out my bedroom window, and I'm across the street from this, with the street lights and the stop lights, I mean, you can see the stop lights from my house and the street lights, and you're always going to see lights. It's almost inevitably going to happen, but are we going to have some kind of lighting control on this property?
There'll be a lighting plan and a construction plan.
Right, okay. Because I think at least that's something to notice that we would be concerned.
Have you done a photometric plan yet? Would your owner be willing to do the photometric plan before the board? I don't think it'll be that complicated. If it's a problem, but I think that's something we can try to work into bring in front of the board.
So if
you look at Casey's, if you look at Casey's, you can see, can you go up just a little bit, Melanie? When that came in, directly across the street, you see the depth of it. It really was probably originally 2 residential lots. The original Casey's was just on the front lot. They bought the house behind and they extended it back.
Yeah.
And that was one of the main reasons for the limitations and some of the screening requirements. Can you pull up this lot on that real quick, Melanie? Working great all day.
Peter's tired too. One more, right?
So it is different, and it does have some adjacent residential property, but as you can see, a lot of those things with Casey's were directed at that, but it's within your discretion, your discussion to.
Right. That could come up later too as well. All right, so we're on the 2.1 acres with convenience store, car wash, and restaurant, conditional use permit, the -78. We'll entertain a motion if there's no more questions at this time.
Is this where, and I apologize, is this where we need to have some kind of discussion as to the time for the car wash and?
Yes. For consideration.
So I compare it to the Conoco. Currently, I believe they're open from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. with their with their drive-through car wash.
We gotta separate out the different parts of this, like the car wash.
I think we have to, because the car wash and the drive-through are under the CUP, so we have to address that
Yes,
on
and then
this
whatever you
item.
put on the car wash and the drive-through, if you do, on the CUP, we'll also add those as, then we'll take them all up and just incorporate those in the site plan for all the uses.
I was saying that the car wash probably needs to close sooner than the restaurant and would.
I wouldn't disagree with that. I think 9 o'clock for the car wash and 10 o'clock for the restaurant are
Somewhere in
reasonable.
the 10, 11, but you know.
Well, and depending on, on the restaurant piece, depending on what type of restaurant it is,
Right.
you know, if they're serving breakfast sandwiches or whatever, there may be, I would think the earlier opening hours on the front end are a little less disruptive to people in the area
Than the car wash.
than the later hours of operation, particularly for the car wash. So, and I don't know with any certainty if the other car wash is in town, if they shut down at 9 or whatever.
I think it's about 8 or so.
Is it 8?
I'd say no later than 9 for the car wash.
I would agree with that. No later, and I'm good with if we want to go a little bit earlier even.
Yeah, I mean, I think, this is just experience-based, but, and I know Bart and Tony are gonna love to hear this, but it's a lot easier to set it a little bit more restrictive than once you know exactly what it's gonna be and the construction plans are in, to come back and amend it to give them more hours. So let's
Right.
say a Dunkin' Donuts goes in there.
Right.
And they wanna be open at 5 AM. Well, you know, a Dunkin' Donuts is much different than, I mean, probably people, it's hard to guess when you don't know what it is. I think.
I would like to see it, the hours for like 6 to 8, 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. would be sufficient for most of those things, except for the convenience store, and then it could stay open until 10. You know what I mean?
In the convenience store, we have to put that condition on the site plan.
Okay.
So.
And I will tell you, I would just mention that I think Casey's is 11.
Right.
Yeah.
So are you gonna make it 10 for?
No, I'm just saying that, I was just saying it could be 11 as far as that goes, as far as keeping it continuous with Casey's.
So to clarify, your recommendation, Mr. Graville, is to make it more
Right. You can go ahead.
make it more restrictive at this point, and let them come back for an amendment.
If you're concerned, it's just, because, look, if you give more hours than, it's like, ooh, that's a mistake, that's gonna be a problem.
Right.
Then they're not, I can tell you, Bart's not gonna initiate a zoning request to reduce the hours of operations or just say, okay, you got us, it's more intensive.
Right.
So, I mean, in this stage, and look, this is a recommendation. Between now and then, they may have some additional information where they could bring it in the board. Do you have something to add, Bart?
Right, so whatever you put tonight gives a chance our client to look at their business model and see, and we can come back to the Board of Aldermen and say, 9 o'clock for car wash is too late, or, it needs to be 10 or whatever. We will be able to have some better
Numbers.
information argument
Right.
and requests, but, we do ask for it to be reasonable.
It's the same rule as teaching. You don't give them too much up front. You restrict it first, and then they come back. Yeah.
You have
Because
no
once you give it to them, it's gone. So.
You have no idea the pressure I've had at home. My daughters, especially the oldest, who is addicted to a Quick Trip taquitos, has been telling me to hold out, Dad, until there's a Quick Trip there.
We'll get some taquitos.
Right.
Quick Trip taquitos, they have breakfast taquitos.
Right.
You can process a full diet on them.
So I don't know if we can come to an agreement.
The local car wash, the Conoco car wash, Mr. Detterman looked up, and it is 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Monday through Saturday, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Sunday.
Sounds good.
And then same Same hours on the drive-through restaurant?
Yep. I think that would, well, I think you drive through restaurant, you might want to go 6 just in case school traffic going to school, getting breakfast or something.
Okay.
If that's what they want to do. Like Scott said too, Mr. Costello said, the evening's what you're more concerned about when you got babies going to sleep or this or that or whatever versus babies getting up at 5:30, 6. That's not the, everybody's getting up, going to work, going to school, so that's not the bigger issue there.
Well, and I think it's, in the case of the drive-through food, I don't know of any drive-throughs in town that close that early. And, you know, I want to give as much consideration to the residents that are in the area as we can. But, you know, 8 o'clock at night, there's a lot of people that haven't even thought about going to get their food yet. And
but almost
the drive-through, with the exception of somebody coming through with a really loud car or something of that nature, the drive-through, in my estimation, doesn't have nearly the potential to be a nuisance that the car wash and the vacuums do. I'd really prefer to see us lean more towards like a 10:30 or 11 o'clock close, like most of the other drive-throughs are in town.
Good with that? 6 a.m. to 11?
Same time as their convenience stores hours, maybe later too?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, so here's the conditions on this one. Again, let me review the stormwaters. We need to do the stormwater on this one?
Yeah.
Trash, shrubs, the hours on part of it. And is this where we do the write in and write out on this one?
Yes.
Okay.
And then I think we also, just to clarify, as Mr. Corman did, making sure that it's the 4 pumps rather than the 5 that the plan that we saw shows. So I'll try to get as much of it right as I can. I'll make a motion to recommend approval of the Nirdosh LLC conditional use permit, subject to the submission of adequate stormwater plan, the addition of a trash enclosure on site, the addition of the shrubs specific to the southern edge of the property in particular, setting hours of operation for the car wash to begin at, is it 8 a.m.? Did you say?
I think it's 7 a.m.
7 a.m. to 8 p.m.
To 8 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Sunday, and finally, subject to the restriction to 4 pumps total on site.
And right in, right out.
Oh, and I'm sorry, and to the restriction that the ingress is a right turn in and right turn out.
4 islands, not 4 pumps.
Yeah,
Yes,
4
right, yeah.
Thank
yeah,
you.
they're either side, you're right.
Thank you,
Yes.
Mr. Gagliano.
And the
point.
drive-through hours.
Huh?
And the drive-through hours of,
We have to put those on, I'm sorry, on the restaurant, the drive-through hours,
6 a.m.
6 a.m. to 11 p.m. That's a lot.
Second. My part was easy.
All right, let me go back down here real quick. We're on number 4. Mr. Costello made a motion, seconded by Mr. Cornell, to approve the 2.1 acres with the C-Store Car Wash Restaurant CUP-78 with those changes that he just said, with the addition, the conditions. I could repeat them if you want me to, but I won't do it. Okay, I got them. All right, does anybody have any questions or comments at this time? Roll call vote?
Mr. Cornell?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Costello?
Yes.
Mr. Barton?
Yes.
Mr. Durbin?
Yes.
Mr. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes. Motion passes 7-0. Again, that'll come in front of the board on December 21st. Next date, 2.81 acres with the convenience store, car wash, and restaurant site plan -150. Same stuff that we just talked about, except what do we need to?
If you want to consider, so we can, I think what we can do is just make a motion to incorporate those prior conditions. But I think on the site plan, this is where the only additional conditions will be the convenience store and the gas station itself, if you want to put any hours of operation.
Is this where we would also address Mr. Corman said that maybe the developer wouldn't mind putting additional shrubbery on the backside of that property.
Sure, absolutely.
So I think we decided already that we were gonna do the restaurant and the convenience store at the same 6 to 11 to compete with Casey's and then the shrubbery, so.
And one other thing I'd mention, just for the people here that live in the neighborhood, this piece of the entire subdivision that's up for the proposal to develop is separated by, as you know now, a fairly large piece of land that's not on the development plan right now. Later, whenever that does come forward for development, typically the city, when there is a commercial zone that abuts a residential zone, there are not only requirements to screen, but either for noise abatement or for line of sight, but there's basically a requirement to kind of protect that residential area from any of the visible or audible impacts of that development.
There's a buffer requirement, which is a distance requirement, and a screening requirement. So those will be things that, if that future property comes in, there's not only, to limit distance or sound and light travel, but also actual physical screening.
And it's, in my time on the commission, rather than just shrubs, which don't necessarily provide a whole lot of protection to someone's backyard from a commercial zone, those buffer zones oftentimes will have a requirement for some kind of a berm, a fence, taller evergreen trees, and things of that nature. So I think typically in the past we've seen that every board of aldermen and this commission has always tried to provide some of that protection for the neighbors to the development.
Entertain a motion?
Okay, I'll make the motion to recommend.
When you get all that writing, you gotta put that.
Recommend approval of the Nordosh LLC site plan with the noted conditions that were already stated in the conditional use permit and the addition of hours of operation for the C-store fuel operation, opening at 6 a.m., closing at 11 p.m., and the addition of additional shrub along the west boundary of
Southern.
Well, we already have the southern. I
Okay.
think. Did you want it on the west boundary?
West boundary,
Right.
yeah.
And that was it, right?
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
I'll second it then.
All right.
I couldn't get all that out.
I have a motion by Mr. Costello, second by Mr. Durbin to approve the 2.1 acres with the convenience store, car wash, and restaurant site plan -150 with the conditions stated under the last one plus this one. Any other questions or comments at this time? Roll call vote.
Mr. Durbin?
Yes.
Mr. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Dieterman?
Yes.
Mr. Cornell?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Costello?
Yes.
Mr. Barton?
Yes. Motion passes 7-0. That'll come in front of the board on December 21st. We'll go back up to number 3 at this point. 10.79 acres west of Highway 47, north of Warrior Avenue, the subdivision -97.
This meets the code requirement, and you just need to vote on it. So it's an administrative approval, ministerial approval. It meets the requirement.
Okay. Anybody want to make a motion? This is your time. Come on, boys.
I'll make a motion to recommend approval of the subdivision approval SUBD 97 for the Nordosh LLC subdivision as submitted.
Second it.
Motion by Mr. Costello, second by Mr. Cooper to approve the 10.79 acres west of Highway 47, north of Warrior Avenue, subdivision plan -97 as submitted. So, any other questions or comments? Roll call vote.
Mr. Dieterman?
Yes.
Mr. Cornell?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Costello?
Yes.
Mr. Barton?
Yes.
Mr. Durbin?
Yes.
Mr. Cooper?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0, and that'll come from December 21st. Next order of business will be item number 7, Forest Ridge Townhomes Conditional Use Permit -77.
So we made our recommendation on this with regards to Forest Ridge. Obviously, our biggest concern with meeting the development criteria laid out in code, I think it's pretty obvious that Morgan Street is substandard. I don't know that the developer really addressed it or disagreed with that point to handle this additional traffic along this roadway. So staff's recommended denial of the conditional use permit. I mean, really at this time until Morgan Street, a program has been put in place to, improve and do the capital outlay for Morgan Street. It just, staff's belief is that studying this project is that it's too dense and it's too much traffic to dump onto Morgan Street with the project just approved that Mr. Beckermeyer brought through the city for the single-family residential development.
My question on this is more procedural. So I understand if the street issue, to me, is a hurdle that we can't get past. That being said, I know that the Board of Aldermen will have a bite at this apple as well. So my question is this a form where as a commissioner, we need to voice all of the different concerns that we have with this project? Because I agree with much of what the community members here said. I have additional concerns. So I don't know if...
Absolutely. I think it's a conditional use permit. So as you all know, is that typically we approve conditional use permits with conditions. For this one, as Mr. Beckermeyer has pointed out numerous times, that's not on my property to improve Morgan Street. The city has to have a plan to improve Morgan Street to not only handle the traffic that's there, the park traffic, the additional traffic of the new development Mr. Beckermeyer brought in, but also, consideration for additional development down the road. That's the staff's perspective from a technical level. From, I guess, for lack of a better word, a holistic level relevant to your consideration, absolutely I think it's important, because I think one of the things is the developer needs to know what the issues are. Needs the feedback to say, okay, where am I at on this, or what was the opinion on this?
One of the items that I noticed as I was doing a review on this, it seems like usually when we have a development proposed, whether it requires a conditional use permit or not, if it requires a site plan, even if it's an ordinary subdivision that doesn't have any other noted restrictions, we typically at least get elevations and some typical structure floor plans to review so that we've got some concept of what the product looks like standing in the street. And just as a general suggestion for Mr. Beckermeyer, those are always helpful if you know what it is that you want to build, because it helps give us an idea to be able to see it rather than having to imagine it.
This suggestion was made to staff with Sunnyside. We've had a lot that, Sunny did that. Essentially, you all said the same thing on the Sunnyside development. It's nice to see the elevations to know what we're looking at, to kind of get a better idea of what it looks like instead of a flat piece of paper. We'll bring that concern to staff level again and once again suggest to the developers or request that they bring elevations to show, not that your decision is based, or we do not have an architectural board. But it's easy to, so it's easier to conceptualize what this development looks like.
And just to kind of articulate many of the concerns that have been brought up that resonate with me and some of the others that I've come up with on my own. First and foremost, the development that Mr. Bolte brought up, Stone Meadows, Mr. Barton was here when that was discussed, and I was strenuously in objection to that development at that location. And at the time, I can't remember what the total number of units that were proposed were. The Board of Aldermen ultimately did approve it, but reduced the number down to whatever it's now approved for. But that notwithstanding, the means of parking, basically the front yard is the parking for each unit. Yep. And there is no real on-street parking to speak of, because every parking spot has to back out onto the street. For 3-bedroom units, I feel like this is way too little parking. There's just not nearly enough account given to 2 parking spaces per unit, only one of which is designated for each individual unit. And then we're talking about potentially multiple owners, 11, 12 different owners of the structures independent from one another. It just seems like it could be a nightmare for everyone there. I also, I recognize that the stormwater plan intends to use the existing lake. And my concern with that, and I'm sure Mr. Corman and the engineers have done the stormwater calculations, but my concern is in the springtime when we've got a lake that's already pretty full up, we don't have any detention capacity anymore at that point. There is no detention capacity when the lake's already full. I really feel like a development of this nature needs to account for all of its detention in one place on premise and not
On
dumping
site?
out. Yes.
Zero water off?
Well, per the stormwater calculations, yes. Because there's a rate of flow that you're allowed to have. I have concerns with the fact that we're depending on a reservoir that's already full for a good part of the year. So, of course, the road improvement plan is a big issue. I get it that you sometimes are waiting on the city to do some of this this infrastructure development, but understanding Mr. Corman's point that these wouldn't all be built at once, the fact that we've got potentially 97 or 98 homes going in already approved and ahead of this, and in the meetings that we discussed that particular development, we specifically raised one of the objections to the question of whether that property should be R2 or R3 was the fact that whenever we do a rezone, as we did in that instance, we have to take into account the possibility that the rezone and the developer that's requested it may ultimately not do the development and sell it and look at what potential future owner may want to turn it into. And it was very clearly stated at that time that no one on this commission felt like multifamily is appropriate on Morgan Street, period. And I continue to feel that way. And so those are my concerns.
I definitely feel that multifamily is not consistent with all of the other development that's put in place. I'm also very concerned with the ability to handle the resident and visitor vehicles. Once Morgan Street is brought up to modern standards, for lack of a better term, I think that it's going to bring on an even bigger issue, because now all of a sudden you've got a modern road of good width, and now it's going to be the cut through from Main Street and Highway U to hit Bruni, come out on 47, and that's how you're going to access the high school, Warrior Ridge Elementary School, to avoid the stoplight at Main Street and all that traffic down 47. Likewise, at the end of the school day, when it's backed up in the area of the old Kroger store on past the Baptist Church, if you're needing to get across town, you're going to drop through Bruni, across Morgan, hit Market Street, and you're going to be out on Veterans Memorial. So again, once that Morgan Street is brought up to current standards, I think we're going to be dealing with an even bigger issue with traffic.
One other thing that I forgot to mention, this type of development, and talking about the PUD versus, when we're doing these on individual lots but not making it a PUD, I've got a concern that each fourplex has a unique owner, each of whom is responsible for the maintenance of that fourplex but not any of the others. I've got to believe that at some point the consistency of care and the quality of the neighborhood suffers for that. And so I really feel like I can't support this development in this location in any form. But if this development were to be proposed somewhere where the transportation and all the other access issues were a little easier to overcome, I still feel like it would need to be submitted in a format where it's a single owner for the entire property, so that there's one party responsible for the quality.
Do I get to add one more thing then?
Please do.
So one of the areas also is Stone Ledge, whatever the name of those condos are. I know when that was initially built, the idea was that those would be individually owned and occupied as condominiums. Those have all turned to rentals, and there's obviously a market and a need for rentals. The one thing that has that this plan doesn't, those I believe are on basements. When you don't have a garage, when you don't have a basement, when there's nowhere to store the kids' bikes or the kids' toys, I think we've all been through neighborhoods where we can view what the result of that is. So I think that would be a way to mitigate some of those concerns if there was some sort of storage, basement, way to contain those items of the occupants. Now I'm done.
Any other questions or comments?
Okay, so
So this will be an affirmative.
rather than make the motion to recommend denial in this case, we've stated, I think, a number of concerns with this. I am going to make the affirmative motion to recommend approval of Forest Ridge Townhomes CUP 77.
A motion by Mr. Costello, seconded by Mr. Cornell, to approve at this point this conditional use permit -77 of the Forest Ridge Townhomes. If you agree, you'll say yes. If you disagree, you say no. Roll call vote.
Mr. Cooper?
No.
Mr. Dederman?
No.
Mr. Cornell?
No.
Mr. Miller?
Nope.
Mr. Costello?
No.
Mr. Barton?
No.
Mr. Durbin?
No.
Motion fails, 0-7. That'll come in front of the board on December 21st. Next order of business will be number 8, Forest Ridge Townhomes Site Plan -152.
I think for this one, you can just kind of say same and then go to a vote. And I think for the remaining two, for the subdivisions as well.
Okay. Shouldn't be any more questions. We've kind of discussed that pretty much. So number 8, Forest Ridge Townhomes Site Plan -152, we'll accept a motion.
Well, I guess for consistency, I'll...
Accept the site plan, Forest Ridge Townhomes, SP 152.
Okay, motion by Mr. Cooper. Second by
Second.
Cornell. Once again, if you approve, you say yes. If you disapprove, you say no. Motion, roll call vote.
Mr. Dederman?
No.
Mr. Cornell?
No.
Mr. Miller?
Nope.
Mr. Costello?
No.
Mr. Barton?
No.
Mr. Durbin?
No.
Mr. Cooper?
No.
Motion fails 0-7. And last order of business will be back up to number 6, Forest Ridge Townhome Subdivision -96. Motion by...
To accept the
Forest Ridge Townhomes SUBD 96.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Second by? Second. Mr. Dedman. Any other questions? Roll call vote.
Mr. Costello?
No.
Mr. Cullum? No, sorry. Mr. Barton?
No.
Mr. Durbin?
No.
Mr. Cooper?
No.
Mr. Priest?
Nope.
No.
No, keep going.
Not here.
Yeah, he's not here.
Mr. Cornell?
No.
Mr. Miller?
No.
See what happens when
Made it to the last one.
You got one? I think, did you miss one?
Did I miss anybody?
Yeah, Mr. Detterman.
Oh, Mr. Dederman.
No. Okay, motion fails 0-7. It is tiring. Thank you for everybody's patience tonight, though, and we appreciate everybody coming out. I will turn it back over to anybody over here.
Yeah, I will.
Okay?
So right now there is a meeting on January. We got 2 things on there so far. And just for your information, one of them is expansion out at Orange Blossom. And the other one's a conditional use permit. So-
Thanks to the community members for coming out. We appreciate you guys.
Date's January.
January.
What date?
4th?
It's first Thursday, whatever it is.
First Thursday. I
It'll
don't
be
know what
the
that date
6th,
is.
I believe.
All right.
All right.
Mr. Deitch is not here. We may have to stay all night because there's no one here to adjourn the meeting. So somebody you have to make a motion.
Make a motion that we
Mr. Dedham, make a motion to adjourn. Mr. Cornell, second it. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Have a great night. Thank you.
All right.